Next, we'll call to order the Planning Commission regular meeting. We've already done introductions. Item B, approval of minutes for the August 8th. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Chase. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Klooster. Any discussion on the minutes? Not seeing any. I'll call for the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are approved. Okay. Next, we have public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on a non-agenda item? Mr. Halleck. Welcome, former chair.
Good evening, Madam Chair, and members of the commission. As a former city commissioner, planning commissioner for 14 years, and former chair, I would like a few minutes to be able to address a topic that has no permitted comment this evening, the master plan.
Please.
By any criteria that are listed out here, the master plan that occurred was a tremendous success. Time does go on. Changes are probably needed. However, I would strongly advise, don't go after the neighborhoods this time. That was what would happen last time, and it was a serious mistake, and it was done behind the scenes and then brought out as a fait complete, and it blew up. And it blew up because it was not what was wanted by the neighborhoods and the residents in the neighborhoods at all. And if you look at what's happened with the master plan, the neighborhood portion has been tremendously successful. The overlay zones that were formerly multiple from 1969, which never occurred and was a complete failure of a plan, we now have literally tens of millions of dollars of new homes that have been built in the areas, especially to the north, northeast, and northwest, and millions of dollars more investment in these areas. It would not be wise to go through and disrupt these areas. If you wish to rejigger downtown, that's something that you can certainly look at. But I would strongly advise not going through the neighborhoods. We all know what happened last time. It changed the commission, it changed the plan commission completely because it was not what was wanted. And it still isn't, to go through the neighborhoods and start injecting large amounts of multiple family, high density businesses. That is not what is wanted. And it is incumbent upon this body and the city commission to do what is wanted by the citizens, not by the few. And I just would like you to consider that while you move forward, because I suspect you're going to do a completely new plan. I would like you to be open as to public input. Last time was very secluded. The input was limited to those who had a vested interest in what was being proposed at the beginning. And that's why everything blew up so badly. Please don't make that mistake again. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Very much appreciated. Okay, anybody else in the audience? Okay, so we'll close the public. Oh, yes, please. On the aisle? Hello, your name, sir?
Hi, I'm Richard Bobian, and I'm here to discuss the Royal Oak City Center development.
Okay, that's on the agenda?
What's that?
That is on the agenda?
So I should come back when you get that up.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else would like to comment on non-agenda items? So we'll close the public comment and move under new business. So item number 1 under new business is a public hearing, SP 17-09-23. It's a site plan to construct a 6-level, 86-foot mixed-use building with unspecified ground-level commercial uses and upper-level businesses, administrative or professional offices, the Royal Oak City Center. on the site of the municipal off-street parking lot located west of 211 South Williams Street. Mr. Twing.
Planning Commission may recall that back in May of this year, you did approve a special land use permit and site plan for the Royal Oak City Center project, or this office building. You may be also aware that following that Planning Commission approval, there was a lawsuit that was filed, and that the circuit court judge presiding over the lawsuit did issue a stay back in June. Following that order, the petitioner did submit in August a request to withdraw and abandon that approval from the Planning Commission, and that was recognized. So it was withdrawn, and they're starting from scratch. In August this year, they've filed a new site plan application, basically for the same building. There is no request for a special land use. The special land use request last time was related to an indication that the ground floor would include a restaurant with liquor service, as well as an outside patio. Those two items have been removed from the plan and are not part of the building plans that are in front of you, so there is no special land use permit necessary or written as part of this. It's a simple site plan request for an office building with a leasable tenant space on the ground floor. The building pretty much is the same, and the site plan is the same in most aspects in terms of its placement, its footprint, its height, its material are pretty identical to the building and plans that you saw back in May. Some of the slight modifications there are, if you look at the floor plan, the first floor mechanical area was slightly modified, as well as the waste receptacle and utility enclosures next to the alley were kind of switched around. You will also see in the report that the contingencies, the staff, as far as the site plan, have not changed. I can walk through those after the petitioner's presentation, or at another time earlier or later in the evening. I would also indicate that we did hand out a resolution with some items if the Planning Commission was supportive of the site plan after the presentation and discussion. The reason there was a public hearing notice and offered this evening was that the petitioner requested it. There is not one required under the ordinance for a straight site plan approval. So the reason we noticed it as a public hearing was at their request. With that, I'll stop and see if there's any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Twing? Okay, I've got a question. So by eliminating the alcoholic beverage and outdoor cafe, that eliminates a special land use. What if they wanted to have like a place to sell sundries, like coffee and bagels and that kind of stuff? Is that okay? Is it just the alcoholic beverage and the outdoor cafe? Or can they have another food?
Any permitted use that's listed in the central business district could be considered as part of the ground floor area. The upper floors are indicated on the plan for office use. So any permitted use could occupy the ground floor.
Okay,
Which could include a restaurant.
okay,
It could include a bagel shop or coffee shop.
okay,
What kicked it in for the special land use was the liquor license or alcoholic service. And any type of operation that would want one of those would need a special land use permit. Outside cafes are also listed as a special land use in the CBD. So if the use is listed in the special land use section and they wanted to propose it, it would have to have that as well.
so would that include like a little store that would sell closed beer and closed wine. It's like any alcohol, whether it's
Any
an
alcoholic
open,
service, doesn't make a distinction between
open
SDM,
and closed.
Class
Okay.
Cs,
Okay,
taverns, any of those.
okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Twain? Okay, is the petitioner here?
Good evening. My name is Ron Boji, and I'm the president of Boji Group. I'm also a partner in Central Park Development Group, and we're honored to be here tonight. I've sat up in front of this microphone on more than one occasion over the past couple of years, and today is truly another honor. Thank you, Madam Chair, Mr. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and all the other commissioners that are here today from the planning. This is truly an exciting and a transformational project in downtown Royal Oak. We're going to be discussing strictly our office building, but the office building does have adjacent aspects to it. We're going to describe that in more details. It has been a long road, as I've described. We see the end coming very quickly in the sense of a groundbreaking in the very short near future. And that end will be just the beginning of what is truly going to be a transformational redevelopment of two underutilized pieces of property inside of your city. And it all goes back to really the initiative that the task force had back in 2014 about how to bring Class A office space into your downtown area, somewhere to the tune of hundreds of people to your facility, and close to 200,000 square feet of Class A office space. We'll go through later on during the presentation of the due diligence we've done and what's taken place. But as Tim said very eloquently, and I thank you, is that we have modified our site plan approval. And the modification is we are not requesting a liquor servicing restaurant area on the first floor, nor are we asking for an outdoor cafe. We are very pleased to say unanimously, just short 2 weeks ago, that we received a approval of our master development agreement. We look to a finance closing in the next few months and a groundbreaking in early December, with announcements of wonderful people that will be coming to your downtown area to the tune of 700 new people living, eating, shopping, playing in the park, and being part of your downtown area. Again, many of the aspects of this building will be described inside of what we're going to present to you, but in no means is it looked at as an independent item. It's part of a holistic approach to your downtown and to the two city blocks that this is going to be a part of. I'm fortunate enough here today to be with my Vice President of Construction Management, Michael Lineweber, who will be going over your information. We have numerous studies that we've done. We have our parking study engineer that is here today. We've done numerous traffic studies, economic impact studies, numerous development items to truly see what's the highest and best use, what fits properly, and what flows well with your downtown Royal Oak area. And as Mr. Twain said, per the submittal of our site plan, a public environment is not necessary. But we have gone quite the opposite during this entire 2 years. We have had numerous town hall meetings, substantial amounts of individual meetings with organizations across the board of your community, inside of your community and outside of your community. And we wanted to make sure that anyone who would like to be part of this environment is aware of the meeting that takes place, our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues, and some that would actually look at the project in maybe an obstacle for today, but we'll quickly see that it'll be a success for the future. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Michael Lineweber.
Thanks, Ron. And Thank you, Commissioners, Madam Commissioner, and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Mike Lineweber. I'm a Royal Oak resident. I live at 1704 Bassett here in Royal Oak. I'm also a lead AP, which means environmental sustainability issues are important to me, and I'm the Vice President of Construction for Boji Group. Similar to Ron, I'm proud to be able to present this project to you. And while you may have seen many of these slides previously, it is a fresh approach. So questions that come up, we're happy to answer as we go through our presentation and following up. As Mr. Twing mentioned, while it's a focus on the site plan review and approval of our building, we will comment on other information that was part of our due diligence as a developer in preparing this project to you in the community. And since we last presented this, there are really 4 significant changes, as Tim had mentioned. One is we've received approval of our development agreement. Number 2 is the liquor serving establishment's no longer part of the plan. 3 is the outdoor seating is also no longer part of the plan. And we've reconfigured the first floor loading area and entrance or exit onto the alley to really better connect, make the area work better connect to the alley, which is a benefit for the building as well as to our neighbors to the west. So many of the things that are the same. It's a Class A office building, highest quality materials that defines what a Class A office building is. It's approximately 140,000 square feet, 6 stories tall. It is designed according to LEED standards, meaning it's a high-performance building. And that relates to internal building systems. It talks about mechanical systems, that sort of thing, which are all high-efficiency units. And high-quality materials and finishes used throughout. So, Mr. Twing, I know you've got the ability to scroll through, so we'll take you through the site itself. The location of the project, it sits in the area of the current parking lot, outside of the front of the existing City Hall. It is east of the alley, west of the City Hall, north of 3rd Street, south of 2nd Street. The view from the corner of Williams and 3rd, this is looking north, and I think this is a site everybody knows quite well. One thing that we had talked about the last time, and there's been some action taken, when we look at the site, the boundaries and the right-of-way is defined as part of the project. Some things have significant that have moved forward. The boundaries of the site itself are shown, and those have been created both for the function and code compliance for the building. Adjacent to the building, however, the existing alley, as was dedicated and is, I think, standard in the Royal Oak alleys, was a 20-foot wide right-of-way. The City Commission did take action and created a 10-foot additional width. So that is now a 30-foot right-of-way overall, and our building plans reflect as such. The benefit of that for our building as well as the adjacent buildings is having sufficient space for deliveries. There's numerous delivery vehicles, beverage trucks, waste handling out of that alleyway. The additional width provides space for vehicles to pass by one another, as well as gives us enough room for the radius for our servicing of our building, so that we can have dumpsters and that sort of thing tucked inside of our building without having to have them detract from the alleyway traffic. So if we go to the first floor, we kind of reorient the site plan here with the existing City Hall to the top of the screen. The main entrance to the building is facing the future Central Park. So that main entrance is on the east side of the building. In the center, we have the building core, elevators and stairwells and utility shafts. 2 major leasable areas on the first floor to the north and the south. And the tenant usage, as was mentioned, is consistent with what's allowed by zoning. Any deviations for any future special uses would go through the normal processes of review and approval and comment by the city ordinance. The secondary entrance off the alley as I mentioned, has been simplified and improved. We've straightened it out in simple terms so that access to the lobby can now, people can come and go without having to walk through the loading dock. One of the areas that they do walk by, though, is the bicycle storage area. And in our preliminary indications with our leasing, as well as just sustainability issues, we see bicycle traffic as being a significant benefit for our tenants, frankly, and the public. And so we've enhanced that area. We've added some square footage to it. We're also providing a bicycle, what's called a fix-it station. And I don't know if anybody has seen one of these. If you go out Paint Creek Trail, you'll see them periodically. But it's a station where somebody that has a flat tire needs to do a simple fix. It's a small kiosk that has some tools. And a person can, I guess theoretically fix your bike at one of these. There are, and loading, as Mr. Twing mentioned, has also been realigned a little bit. We flipped the location of the electrical service gear and the enclosed dumpster areas. It just works better when we look at its connection to the alley and the utility grid. There are 7 private parking spaces that would be coming off the alley as well. And as I said, the design of that area overall is to minimize disruption to the alley itself. When we go to the second floor is open to the lobby below off the east end of the building. The common core elevators, stairwells are pretty typical. 3rd through 6th floor, also same typical floor layouts. Each floor is roughly 25,000 square foot outside dimensions. Floor-to-floor heights 13.6. We do see, that the ability for exposed ceilings, things like that in our future tenant spaces that they could take advantage of. And when we go to the 6th floor, the ceiling is higher yet. Our floor-to-deck height on the 6th floor is 15 feet, so it's 18 inches higher than the lower floors. Also on the 6th floors will be an outdoor terrace with a view to the east, and that would be a tremendous amenity for overlooking the Central Park and the city as a whole. We go to the outside views of the building, and we really want to reinforce the quality of the materials that we're using. We're using brick, we're using precast stone, we're using architectural metals. The building is, it's important it's designed with the facade to wrap all the way around it. It's a 4-sided building. While it does have a front door and an address, the architectural treatment of the building goes all the way around. We made very careful studies of the walk-around studies and how the building looks from all 4 sides, including from the alley side. And one of those views, as we look from Main Street, is indicative of the kind of quality with the brick and metals and stone. The signage shown on this plan is just an indication. Any signage on the building would also go through its own approval process with the city. Main entry is on the east side of the building. As we show, there'll be an architectural canopy. As you go into the building, the lobby is a 2-story high space, granite floors, Class A finishes throughout. And also off that lobby would be entrances to the leased areas on either side. And then, so as you've seen, it's a high-quality project. We trust that it merits approval from the board. And at this point, this is the point that we concluded the presentation back in May. However, would like to add additional information for really informative purposes. So while the requirements for site plan approval, we think that's been addressed and met, the additional slides are really for strictly informational purposes. These would not typically be presented in a site plan approval package, but as this project has evolved, we've attempted to be as open as we are thorough. So much of the due diligence that we've gone through on the project, we'd like to share some of that information with you. So early on, with our proposed role some years ago as master developer, and now with our role as a private developer, we undertook many important tasks: traffic studies, parking studies, environmental studies, geotechnical surveys, civil engineering, market studies, architectural studies, sustainability reviews, mechanical, electrical engineering, structural engineering, financial analysis, et cetera. It's a lot of work that goes into these buildings. While they're all very, very important to us, two of these seem to be the hot topics with many, and that's parking and traffic. So as each of you know, because the building is in the central business district, parking does not have to be provided on site. It's not a criteria for approval, nor does a traffic study need to be performed. However, unlike other projects which have received approval, we've taken a look at these items, and we want to share them with you in summary fashion so that you can understand that the impact of this building and some of the other considered improvements that the city is going to make does not have a negative impact, but in fact is a significant positive impact from the various metrics of parking and traffic studies. So we look at traffic. Specifically, we had commissioned Parsons Transportation, which is a respected traffic engineering firm, and they looked at they took traffic counts in all those locations highlighted in blue, not just for office building, but all the traffic and all the demand generators that would be occurring in that area. What they found was at peak levels of service, the roads themselves operate well within their capacity. However, the intersections are the limitation, and specifically one intersection, and that was the intersection of Main and 11 Mile, which I think we all have seen before and witnessed and done firsthand. We've seen how that operates. It was operating at a level D, and they score it much like your school scored A through F. F is bad, A is good. That intersection was operating at a level D as it was. With the current improvements, or the proposed improvements rather, which includes locating an approximately 560-car parking deck at the current open lot, the road grid again operates well within its capacity, and that intersection, which was a level D, is improved to a level C. So it is an improvement to the circulation path and would involve some work from city engineering on retiming signals and that sort of thing, which is being discussed right now as part of the overall project. And then at the point that the parking deck discharges, there would also be an improvement for circulation for pedestrians in particular. When we go to parking, this parking analysis was carefully reviewed. And again, while parking's not required as part of the building approval, part of our due diligence, we had Rich and Associates perform an analysis of the two-block area, which encompasses the city center building as well as other City of Royal Oak elements. David Rich is here, so if we really dive into the weeds on this, he could help answer some questions. But fundamentally, when we look at the project, the numbers and the analysis describe a project which includes the new parking deck. It includes moving City Hall and the police station to the east, includes, plus all the existing uses that are on the site now, including restaurants and other office space. So Rich's study calls these areas Block 1 and Block 3. Block 1 is the courthouse farmers market block. Block 3 is the present open lots, which are and restaurants, libraries, City Hall, et cetera. So the summary shown here, the number of parking spaces on Block 3, which is adjacent to the city center building, goes from a current 223 spaces to a 565 spaces in those two lots that are behind the current restaurants in City Hall. Combined, the overall parking increases to over 1,000 spaces. I think it's about 1,020. There is some discussion of that number even going higher, but this is the data that we have to date. And then with the added demand from the office users, the daytime parking remains in a surplus. The nighttime parking situation, which is really the critical time of peak demand, also greatly improves, and it goes from a surplus for the two blocks of 115 spaces to a surplus of 158 spaces, which is a 37% improvement. This analysis, too, it also assumes day and night utilization of the farmers market. So the farmers market in that number is contemplated using 60 spaces during the week, Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., which we know isn't used that way, but in their analysis, that's how they built it, because it theoretically could be. So those 60 spaces would increase the surplus if those aren't being used by farmers market. It also allows for 115 spaces for farmers market in the evenings, even though, again, it's not used to that intensity. Weekends, farmers market sees an improvement to a surplus of about 464 spaces. So again, it's a tremendous surplus of parking overall. And as I said, there are some discussions to increase that number somewhat further. When you look at the availability of parking in the overall downtown area, within a 5-minute walk from our site, there's literally thousands of parking spaces available. So each circle on this map shows a 5-minute walking radius from the large parking decks or the parking lots, including over 500 new spaces in the new Second Street deck. So right across the street in the main north deck next to the Imagine, there's about 375 spaces. They're largely empty during the day. And we plan on utilizing those decks' empty spaces for our tenants, as well as during construction. It just makes sense to fill up the empty spaces that we can. So when you look at that map, the blue circle alone comprises over 3,300 spaces, and the yellow is over 2,900 spaces. There's lots of parking in downtown Royal Oak. So with that, I'd like to return it to Ron for discussion of economics. Thank you.
If I may request, I would like to do this economic impact and some closing items after public comments. Is that possible, please? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Is that it for now?
That's it. That's it for our presentation.
Okay,
Thank you
thank
very
you.
much.
Any
Thank you.
questions for the petitioner at this point? Ms. Douglas?
Yes, you may have heard an interest among the city commissioners in making this alley a place. And I'd like to know what you have, how maybe perhaps you have changed your plans or what else you might do in order to contribute to making this a more accessible, usable space.
We agree. We would like to see that alley be with as much life as is reasonable in a service alley. While we can't prevent beer trucks, garbage trucks, the various loading from some of the existing businesses that are there. What we can do is ensure that the materials we use and the materials proposed are permanent materials, so you don't see as much deterioration. So initially, we had proposed, for instance, to repave the alley, which is what is there now. After discussions with city engineering and the planning, they said no, they would prefer to use concrete, which is a more permanent and durable and maintainable material. We agree, and we've incorporated that into our plans. There were some discussions about additional surface treatments that we could potentially do there. And those would be items that city engineering would have direct control over how that would be done. At this time, we've been instructed to comply with the city engineering standards, which we have done. And then on our portion of the site, we've got some green space that we have added some islands that wrap around some existing utility poles that we've added some green in there, some plantings, some brick treatments, that sort of thing to soften it up from strictly an alley. We've also used the materials of our building and wrapped the corners with it. So you'll notice that the windows, for instance, on both the leasable spaces to the north and south wrap all the way around into the alley. So it engages the alley as a living place, not as a back door or as just a blank wall, which could have otherwise been the case. So we agree with that initiative.
Good, thank you.
And I wanted to add to that point, as Michael mentioned earlier, we reconfigured the back door area to make it more appealing and really make it a second front door. we extended an olive branch to the local retailers that would sit with us, Mr. Beason specifically, who sat down with us numerous times, and we sat with him, shown by the way we love to work with our neighbors, and actually moved the way the back door was situated. Because we feel coming off the lobby and these 700 people who will have breakfast, lunch, and dinner inside of downtown Royal Oak, probably walking right over to the merchants that are just to the east or west of us, we've actually made it where the back door area flows right off of the elevator. And again, as Mike mentioned earlier, is an inviting back area to come right out into the alleyway. A second item that worked out very well was the allowing us to go with the additional 10-foot of right-of-way. That's what's going to make it far more appealing. It's going to make it more appealing for the retailers that are there who are already thinking of maybe some outdoor seating, whether that be for patio environments or things of that nature. And we envision also enhancing that area with them as well, and maybe even reaching out to the DDA or other aspects. But we've made a good amount of changes ever since our first planning commission meeting by meeting with the local retailers that would meet with us. And we're always open for that any day. Our two-way avenue of conversation is always open.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Mr. Godek?
Is this going to be followed up with any architectural details later in this meeting, or is this it?
This is it.
Okay.
If there's a specific question you have, I'd be happy to see if I could answer it.
I have a couple. One goes back to the traffic study that you have performed, and thank you for doing that. But in your summary explanation, you picked one intersection, and there are several that are surrounding. In this study, were they all staying neutral or increasing in their grade?
The grade, from the study that Parsons did, they're all at level A, and they remain at level A.
Okay. Thank you. And one of the elevations that you have in your drawing package, I apologize for picking it out, but it shows the, and I believe it's probably the alleyway, the DTE poles.
Mm-hmm.
Any consideration for putting electrical underground in that alleyway, or?
At this point, that would be, I think, part of a larger city initiative, but it's not part of our project.
Okay. Thank you.
And also, if we are fortunate enough tonight to get an affirmative vote on our site plan approval, we will be submitting for building permit this week.
Okay, not seeing any questions, we'll open the public hearing. If you could have a seat, please. We'll invite the public up. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this proposal? Yes. I need your name for the record, sir.
Richard Bobian.
Thank you.
I'm Richard Bobian. I'm a registered professional engineer in Michigan, and a certified professional traffic operations engineer. I've been retained by businesses in the area to evaluate the traffic impact study, the parking study, and the traffic safety study. As the traffic study that was referred to today, I have not seen. I'm not sure where that's available to look at. I'd like to see the models that go with that. When you consider development proposals, of course, you have to consider the impact on public health, safety, and welfare, and of course, you have to have the facts in front of you to do that. And You have all the facts. Facts about the development of the roadway network, the parking supply, and the traffic safety have not been fully presented. Without these facts, the development impact on public health, safety, and welfare cannot be determined. A couple of traffic safety things you might think about. We have a lot of pedestrian activity in the area, and a couple of interesting pedestrian crossings that need to be looked at. One is 11 Mile crossing in the Imagine Theater. There's a crosswalk there, but it's a pretty exciting crossing. And I noticed that if you're northbound on Williams and you imagine you're going to make a left turn between 4 and 6 p.m., you're wrong. You're not going to do that. And that suggests to me that there's a traffic crash issue on that part of 11 Mile, and that should be investigated. Of course, we have a crosswalk across Main Street at 2nd, and if we have 700 more office workers circulating in the area, I would imagine there's more traffic on Main Street, and that will affect the safety of the pedestrians making that crossing. So these are things that need to be evaluated, and they have not been.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Yes, sir, in the front. Your name, please?
I'm David Gorsica, former resident of Royal Oak. Good evening. I see some familiar faces up here. 20 years ago, I served on the Royal Oak City Commission from 1994 to 97. It was a very enjoyable time. Served with my colleague, Mr. Dennis Cowan there, and I see Mr. Gillen back there. I'm much grayer, and I do need some devices to see things nowadays, but I am here on behalf of numerous business that are affected by this development. I want to know, though, I'm not here to besmirch anybody, including the developer, or what's going on. I'm here to point out some things that I think are ironic in this sense, that you are now considering parking studies, architectural things after the fact, when the city, I was here 2 weeks ago, approved unanimously the development agreement. However, at that time, you were not presented with a traffic study until today. Don't know why. There's been little or no participation from the DEA beforehand. I don't know why. Again, no parking study was conducted beforehand for the full commission to consider. And at the time I was here, the presentation was made, I don't recall by whom, but the city council approved of a $5 million plus expenditure out of the general fund, yet it was suggested that the monies were going to go back to the city. And as I understand it legally, all of those monies, I think to the tune of about $12 million, is going to go directly to the DDA. So no, not to go back to the city general fund, as I think it was suggested. And I think the city manager had said at the time he sees no difference. Well, I beg to differ, because when monies are and revenues are generated and they're sent to the DDA fund, the DDA can only use those funds for specific delineated things like cityscapes and beautification, things along those lines. So I think the citizens should know that this will not go back to the general fund for the benefit of its citizens, which may or may not, depending on the financial solvency of the city at time, to go out and loan money, because it could have an impact on your debt rating. So it's certain things that, to me, appeared to be upside down, if you will. This is a large-scale development plan, and I'm not suggesting that anybody violated a city charter or an ordinance by considering these things after the fact at the execution of the development agreement. I'm not here to suggest that. It's just
Mr. Gorsica, you've had 3 minutes. It's a 3-minute public hearing.
Okay.
Chair, can I'll make a motion to extend his time
By how much?
another 3 minutes?
Second.
Second? Is this at the pleasure of the commission? Okay, sir, go ahead.
I will try to cut to the chase. And when I attended this full city council meeting, commission meeting, I heard the DDA chair state that the DDA had not addressed the financial aspect of the parking lot yet. And he had not seen any design plans yet. And most importantly, I think he said he was not sure what money or revenues will be needed to fund the debt service to pay for the parking lot. And I tried to quote him on that. So, and I believe also said he's not even sure how many floors would be needed. So what I'm trying to suggest is that for the protection of the health, welfare, safety of citizens, these things, including the traffic study, should have been reviewed prior to the full city commission reviewing those things and not after the fact. So what I would implore this body, this planning commission, to proceed cautiously. And I did get an opportunity to, I'll be quick, review Mr. Bobian's letter, which I think he presented to you, and I quote, "A public body cannot make an objective determination about the protection of public health, welfare, and safety of community without traffic impact study, studying parking supply and demand, and a traffic safety review." And yet you were presented this today, and I don't believe the public had the benefit of reviewing those plans, nor did an expert have the benefit of reviewing traffic and parking plans prior to the meeting. So I think this whole issue deserves some further debate. I would implore you to read the entire letter of Mr. Bobian. But to me, I think you're taking a 2-ton elephant and trying to shove it down a 3-inch PVC tube after the fact and make this work. When I think all this work, and I think it's unprecedented for a major project, and I'm not insinuating that this was done inappropriately, but for a major project this size, these things should have been considered by the public, and the experts. And it is of a grave concern to those affected business owners that these issues were not brought to your attention prior for thoughtful consideration, either by them, the public, or experts. I appreciate the extension of time. I do also have some letters I'd like to present on behalf of several of the affected business owners, if I may.
Please, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Your name, please?
Yes, Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford in Royal Oak. Just a couple of questions before I get on to parking, as you might assume. Number one, it's difficult to understand how a traffic study can say that you've gone from a D to a C by adding a 500-space parking deck with the entrance aisle and entrance to the parking deck almost at that corner. Boggles. Also, on the restaurant, I'd like you to ask them just exactly what kind of a restaurant are you going to put in 8,000 square feet without liquor. We got hassled one time before over at the, what was the First of America Bank building, where they were going to have a large restaurant area, and everybody was saying, "Oh, that's great, they're going to, the bank people are going to eat downtown." Well, it ended up being a subsidized cafeteria. They gave everybody a half hour to eat, and we didn't see hide nor hair of anybody downtown, okay? The Strasburg development over on Main Street, where you've got BD's Mongolian and the Buffalo Wild Wings and that whole thing, when they applied for their approval, it was all supposed to be retail. And we know what it is now. It's all restaurants. So, you know, I don't believe anything I hear. So anyway, on to parking. As it was stated before, it's not the developer's obligation to provide parking. It's, you know, the downtown. And basically, the administration, the city's dropping the ball. There was a rich study or letter back in January 7 of 2015, wherein they stated that there would be an overall shortage in the area of 276 spaces, and they made a case for adding another level of parking. And at that time, they were talking about 600 space parking deck rather than 492, essentially 500 who's counting. And then the additional level would add 90 more spaces, so they end up with 690, which is 490 spaces more than what's being proposed now. The numbers don't add, okay? Now, getting back to my numbers, rather than looking at the overall area where they're talking about shared space of all the other areas, went back and just looked at the development on as the development itself. And you can argue about how many spaces are required. They used 3.5 per
Mr.
thousand.
Harrison?
Yes.
It's been 3 minutes. I'm sorry, that's the public hearing.
All right, well, the city's dropping the ball. Let me just summarize by saying, now the administration is proposing by discontinuing the 2-hour free parking. They're raising parking. They're going to raise parking fees. There's going to be a special assessment to the CBD property owners, and they still allow office on the ground floor. With all this new office, you're still allowing office on the ground floor. It's killing retail. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Your name, please, sir?
Good evening. I'm Mike Skinner. Happy to be here, 130 East Sunnybrook, running for mayor. Pleasure to meet the folks of you who I haven't met on the Planning Commission, and the ones I have. Thank you for serving. I appreciate you, all the work you do. Just a couple things tonight, you know, and listening to Mr. Twing, he said that, you know, this is a simple site approval, and when I heard those words, it just seems like there's nothing simple about this site approval. Really what I wanted to say is I'm all for developing of Royal Oak, and, you know, I've been a citizen here for all my life, and I think we need to do new things here. But I really just am against, and why I'm running for mayor, is against the way that it's being handled by the city commission and to an extent the planning commission. That I've had the opportunity over the last several weeks to meet with several of our mayors and communities that are surrounding Royal Oak, and in each and every case that when they were going for development, whether it's public or private, that they had a process that they went through and a process that they followed. And in this case, and what I've heard at the commission meetings, is that we were waiting for proposals and no one came up and gave us a proposal. Typically what happens is that a commission leads and it doesn't follow the proposals by an individual developer, as good as Mr. Boji's was in the beginning, and it may be today, that it's up to us to lead and you to lead these types of things. And in each and every one of these cases and mayors that I spoke with, the process is very similar, that the city or the planning commission decides what they want to do. They bring in professionals to sort of put a bow around it, sort of say what they wanted to do. Then they go out for an RFQ to get qualified developers or builders, and they look through and they review them and they say, who's capable, who has the financial resources to do this, who do we want to pick? And then they come up with 3 or 4 and let the 4 of them go after each other, or 3 or whatever, to come up with the best project that's good for the city and good for the developer. I've built a number of buildings myself, and I've done this in my private life, and I don't understand why the city of Royal Oak isn't doing this today, or isn't planning to do this in the future. I really hope that you review your policies, that, you know, maybe some of the planning commission and the city commission strategies are in the past, but in today's world, we have access to a lot of technology, a lot of developers, and we can bring other people in there. So I want to thank you once again. I appreciate everyone's hard work, and have a great night.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, on the aisle, in the back? Need your name, sir?
Greg Stanilicho, 617 Dewey.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the...
Greg Stanilicho, 617 Dewey. It's kind of humorous tonight that as I sat here, there was more concern for the brownfield development and issues with a mortgage validation in the event of a liquidation, a foreclosure, or a disaster. Who's going to be responsible for that? Yet not similar amount of concern for $5.5 million of taxpayer money with the same opportunities on the table. A foreclosure, a sale, et cetera. All those tax dollars are out the window. The city seems to rely and utilize old data, old studies, old methods, and old information. We have a 1999 master plan. As we heard, adjustments are needed. That master plan uses a 2008 MSU land use 5-year study. I've looked, there's updated ones. Why are we using 2008 and attaching it to your meeting notes minutes for tonight? We have a real estate comp on a Williams lot that's being sold for $1 that's circa 2011 or 2012, where you tell everybody it's worth $900,000, it's clearly worth more. We have older non-existent studies until this evening, traffic, parking, and we can put all the parking up there you want. You need to do simple math. Figures don't lie, liars make figures. Environmental, etc. Old economic studies. Mr. Johnson, in his notes from the city commission meeting, when I was taught how to conduct a cost-benefit analysis in graduate school, it was drilled into me that unlike private business, the government must look beyond its own pocketbook, specifically where we're taught to examine costs and benefits wherever they may accrue. Hell, that had to be 40 years ago. You guys didn't read or watch what happened in Detroit, Pontiac, and all the other cities that leveraged themselves, and you're about to use margin on monies you rolled forward in a bonding issue to leverage new debt. Are you kidding? That's a Ponzi scheme in real life. You can talk about all the stuff. Mr. Boji's comments in the meeting that were, he wanted to meet with community members. He met with the Monarchs best. That's it. He didn't meet with anybody. We haven't met with them. We have no interest in meeting with them now. We want to use the alley for something different? Sure, great. With all the rats. Let's do that. We got old timestamps on documents. We got tax-paying, we have the tax-paying public that you're lying to. We have false police reports being filed, and we have an election year. Good luck to everybody. We'll see you in court, and we'll see you at the polls.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
would you remind the audience that we up here at the table address each other by our titles and last names, and that's probably appropriate behavior for people speaking to us as well?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir, in the back. I'll remind the audience to refrain from personalizing this. This is a public hearing for this site plan. Your name, sir?
Ron Wolf, 333 North Troy Street, and I'm sorry, this is very personal. I was literally attacked by the city manager last night in the outside. So anyway, it's personal right now. But I'm here. Came here prepared to bury the hatchet with Mr. Boji. I believe in vertical. I believe in parking structures. But tonight I heard something that really creeped me out. The fact, when I first came here, I predicted that the front of the office building will be Mr. Boji's parking lot. Well, instead, I just learned tonight that the entire police station, in the back of the police station, is to be made into surface parking. And it purportedly for the use of the citizens, but it's also for the use of clients of the Boji building. And I'm sure this is planned this way. This leaves a postage stamp area for what I hoped would have been a Central Park. Now, under the fallacious name Central Park Development, the space that is left will only be a suitable area for the relaxation of the tenants of Mr. Boji's office building from what I could see. I'm very concerned about the boxes 1 and 3 of over 500 spaces to be taken over that would normally have been part of a central park that would have led to the rebirth and revitalization of the city and is now being squandered for dross. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am? Just need your name, please.
Yes, my husband. I'm Laura Harrison. I live in the same house he does, 2729 Trafford Road.
Thank you.
I've been a Royal Oak resident over 44 years. I've owned a small business in Royal Oak since 1983. I retired 10 days ago. I was able to sell the business, and the business is staying here. I also, with my husband, own 3 buildings in downtown Royal Oak. And I'm a member of the Save the Market Committee. And I would like to repeat probably what I read at the City Commission about, I think it was a month ago. I was elected to the City Commission in 1992, same as that young man right there, and served for 8 years. And my husband was a trustee of the DDA for 12 years. I have also served on the Planning Commission, the ZBA, and the former Downtown Parking Committee. As a city commissioner in the 90s, we decided to preserve and improve the farmers market. Working with Gene Chamberlain at the county, we acquired the 50% interest in the market that was owned by Oakland County so that we could create long-term plan for viability at the market. We have purchased Oakland County's interest in a small parking lot east of the market and a building and a parking lot on the corner of 11 Mile in Troy. We also acquired the Elks Club property, which was just across the street from the police building, on Troy Street, with a trade for county property at 4th and Stevenson, where the Elks Club now is located. We purchased several privately owned pieces of property to the east of the farmers market. All of these were done to assemble a large parcel of land to accommodate the courthouse and the parking needs for the market. As a city commissioner, I would not have voted to invest this much money and effort if I knew the future commission would take actions that would lead to the destruction of the market. The farmers market has unique parking needs, and no matter what spin is put on it, this issue, the current city center plan, will deprive the market of vital surface parking for its customers, leading to the eventual closing of the market due to lack of parking. That's what will happen. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen. Very few people,
Excuse me, ma'am.
especially
Got 3
my age,
minutes.
I'm almost finished, will not park in a deck and walk 2 blocks and then have to haul their groceries that they have purchased at the market. The one other issue, and nobody has mentioned tonight, is the library. You are going to put the parking for the library in grave danger with your plans.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Yes, please. Your name, please?
Janice Wagman.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last.
Wagman.
Wagman, thank you.
Everyone stresses out. And that was under the impression that you get 5 minutes like at the city commission, so I'm going to talk really fast because I timed this for just under 5. I'm not an attorney, developer, business owner. I'm here to speak on behalf of the citizens. I'm a longtime resident of Royal Oak, 1948. In 1970, while majoring in business administration at Oakland University, I took a class in municipal development. In fact, met with Louis McDaniels here. One of our assignments was a group project to determine the merits of the city of Rochester purchasing a downtown lot for the purpose of creating a parking lot. Group project, we went out, based in a bar, walked around, checked to see what parking spaces were being used, how long, basically an occupancy rate. Lo and behold, the lot was not needed. My professor, who was a resident of Rochester at the time, went back to the city commission, presented our data, and they said, you're right, we don't need the lot. Fast forward to today, despite many members of the public asking repeatedly for a parking study and hearing crickets, we were told at August City Commission meeting Mr. Boji indeed had one and would finally be presenting his findings tonight. The same night, you will be voting, not allowing the public to review the figures, and hopefully, I don't know if you guys had it in advance to review and assess the validity of them. Is this transparency? I don't think so. So here I am today, same goal, 47 years later, running around in William Street parking lot, not stopping at bars this time, and City Hall and Farmers Market, assessing the parking of today. And what I found was what I just passed out to you. As you can see, there's a projected deficit of 361 spaces, not counting the demand generated by the park, visitors to the new office building, and employees and customers in the new office building, retail establishments, whatever they happen to be. I have 3 already. I can't see it on this side. Sorry. I know I'm taking time. Even if a small percentage of the new workers live downtown and are willing to brave the elements year-round, this still leaves a huge shortage. And since the new workers will arrive earlier than most visitors, they will have their pick of prime spaces. How he's going to enforce people going over to Imagine, I don't know. The prime spaces needed by the customers and employees of the Main Street businesses, library, and City Hall. If you think people will just adjust, they won't. And let's not forget, the city has said the jewel of this development is the downtown park, a park that will attract even more people. So the bottom line, as it stands now, this is definitely not a net positive. According to Royal Oak's website, the Planning Commission's responsibility is to advise the City Commission regarding sound community development. You will be wrong if you approve this. I urge you, like the City of Rochester, to consider these facts and decide not to proceed with this development unless and until significant changes are made to resolve this net negative impact on parking without substantially increasing the debt of taxpayers.
Ma'am, it's been 3 minutes.
My last sentence. As it stands now, this project is not sound community development.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Not seeing, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for, pardon me? Yep. Yep. We can bring back the commission. Mr. Boji can come back up. If the commission has questions for the petitioner, now's the time.
Madam Chair. I respect and enjoy and admire the passion by your citizens in Royal Oak. It's truly humbling to see how many people care. But one fundamental item happens in business, as happens in a relationship, and it happens in your public services. It's due diligence. For anyone to have thought that my development company, along with you, the city, and your advisors of Plant Moran Cressa, Kerr Russell, your own wonderful in-house legal planning, economic development, did not thoroughly look through the information over the last 2 years is really not giving anybody credit, and credit is literally saying we didn't pass the first grade. By spending millions of dollars on all of these reports and studies, they were not done for the city. They were not done for anything more than one important item: the viability of what an entire development would embrace. Because if the city of Royal Oak is not prosperous, the citizens will not be able to be prosperous, because the common services of life, safety, the library, roads, and many other aspects will not be available. Those same fundamentals happen in a business. If I do not do all of my due diligence and all of the needed information, then we would not be successful. We cannot look at this just in a glass by ourselves. We look at it as a whole. So with all of that, it is impressive to see 700 new people coming to your community, over $234 million of economic impact, along with 500 jobs that'll be created over the course of the 18 months of construction, and an additional $74 million spent. It's pretty simple. These 700 people cannot wait to come to your city because you have great shops, great eateries, great living quarters, and a phenomenal city commission and planning commission. We thank you for the information that we've been able to discern to you today, and we look forward to your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boji. Okay. Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Groda, before that, everything is great speech. You said you were going to reserve comment, Mr. Boji, for economics at this time?
The economic impact study is what I just described. Again, it has been done by the city, validated by the different organizations to bring in over $234 million of impact yearly. That's just by the office building alone, the workers. And in turn, over the course of 18 months, there'll be over 500 jobs that will be created for construction and bringing in $74 million additionally to the community. The overall economic impact to the community are those kinds of numbers. Obviously, there is numerous other aspects of it itself. But that was what was meant by the impact of it economically and the impact of all the studies that we've done already.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Godek.
I guess I had some other questions that I don't know how this body's feeling about referencing data in this presentation that we haven't had a chance, or the city has a chance to look at in terms of the traffic study. I feel like I got more information from some of the public comment in regards to traffic surrounding this site. Personally, overall, this has gone through a lot of eyes and ears and noses and has developed into something that I think is a good development. I guess I'll be quiet and see what other commissioners feel.
Ms. Douglas.
Mr. Twing, when we review site plans for developments outside the downtown, do we take into consideration parking, traffic?
Well, I'll break them up. The zoning ordinance sets standards for parking. Outside the central business district, land uses are required to provide their own on-site parking. If this building were outside the CBD, it would be required under the ordinance to build its own parking. Since it's in the central business district, it's not required to provide any, as is the other buildings, office buildings that you've approved in the past couple of years. One on 3rd Street and one on Second Street that's currently under construction. So in that regard, in terms of parking, they're not required to provide it under the ordinance. The traffic is generally looked at in terms of staff comments from engineering. A lot of times they're sent to the TIA to make comments on Northwood Shopping Center, by example, in terms of driveway configurations and locations, and our process is part of the site plan approval when it comes back to you. If there are concerns with the placement of those driveways, staff generally adds those to your contingencies as a requirement to make changes. In this case, there was discussion of the traffic analysis primarily as it dealt with the location of the parking deck that's proposed for the north lot and the driveway entrance exit and its impact and that placement. And that's the primary purpose of why it was looked at and the impact on that intersection at 11. There was not the belief that it would impact the other intersections, and that proved out true. So as part of those reviews. And again, if those discussions in the last 2 years had raised any issues, we would have brought those to you in May as well as today. So while there's not a traffic study presented to you in May or today, it's not something that was ignored in terms of staff review and input. There is no requirement in the ordinance for a traffic study, and there is no requirement in the ordinance for a parking study. If you feel it's necessary to have one and different, that's fine. The downtown area has been studied several times. It's been updated several times. Turnover occupancy counts. Rich and Associates actually prepared a model that the staff periodically uses to see the impact of developments on each block, and that's reviewed on periodic occasions to see the number of spots. Having said that, I anticipate that as part of the parking deck and the overall site, since we're talking about the overall site beyond this office building, I assume when you get the parking deck and the City Hall as part of your site plan approval, we'll have a bigger discussion on how much parking's there and how much is planned for that deck. As indicated in the presentation tonight, that deck is currently showing about 565 spots based on current discussions. And then depending on the placement of the City Hall building, which the commission still has to give some review over, that'll impact the number of spots over in the farmer's market lot. So in terms of the development agreement in this office, it's looked at. And it's part of your packet in the sense of what staff provides you a recommendation on.
So our job here is a site plan review is basically to review the box that's been presented to us, the building and the areas around the building, correct?
Yes, in the ordinance terms are there impacts of this development that you visualize that you would say that certain items need to be improved in order to mitigate an impact? You can't require Mr. Boji to build off parking. He's not required to provide it. As is no one else in the downtown other than residential and hotels. So that's not an issue for Mr. Boji. It may be an issue for the city commission in terms of how many spots and how big the deck is and how much money you want to spend on other parking, but it's not Mr. Boji's issue.
And it's not our job tonight.
Well, you couldn't tell him to build it. I mean, he's in compliance with the
Right.
zoning ordinance under that item.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any further discussion or questions for the petitioner, Mr. Twing?
I did say that I would go through the staff contingencies. I did hand out a suggested resolution if you want to stay consistent with your approval in May. I didn't want to make an assumption, but I assume since you approved the basic building and layout in May, and there were very little changes to it in the special land use, but you will see there are a suggested resolution in terms of addressing the various site plan items, and then the contingencies are listed under item 2 and 3 in terms of the site plan contingencies. The items prior to that are basic your statements as to whether you believe the plan is in compliance with ordinance requirements, whether the petitioner's provided all the information that you need to make a decision, and so on. If that resolution is one that the planning commission would support, I would suggest you read it into the record.
If so, Mr. Twing, do you want the entire document read into the record?
No, I think you could get down to item 2.
Okay.
Because those are, and then base it on staff contingencies.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Mayor.
Yeah, so, you know, I think on August 28th, we had a really long meeting, and I think we discussed the merits of the project inside and out. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that. What I will say specifically to the site plan, I'm encouraged by some of the seemingly minor changes that I think will have a improvement for the overall project. One in being that, you know, the Central Park Development Group did, in its discussions, reach out to some of the adjacent property owners, and some of the ideas that came up were to actually, instead of just having a back door, you know, those 700 employees that are going to be in that building will now be able to feed out and patronize those businesses right behind the building, which I think is, you know, great for, you know, when we talk about economic development. It's encouraging, it's welcoming. I like the idea of the bicycle rack, both for private and public use. I think it's important to have covered racks. We just had a business here or on 4th Street when we were talking about their parking situation, and what was it, 50% of their employees live within 2 or 3 blocks of the business, and they ride their bicycle to work. So I'm very encouraged by that. And as we as a city start to move forward with additional north-south bike lanes, like we've done on 4th Street going east and west, I think, you know, any number, could be big, could be small, but I think if folks live in the area, they will choose from time to time to ride their bike, and I think that's a great thing for many reasons. You know, getting the additional space in the alley, I think allows for much more maneuverability. Some of the logistical challenges will go away. I think that helps neighbors be, you know, afford the opportunity to be friendly neighbors. It affords a little bit more space to do some things, I think, that were mentioned about some of the, you know, brickwork that could be put down and some of the green space. I think what we've seen, for those of you who aren't aware, there's a mural getting painted on the side of the Maury, and that's a really great cooperation between artists and businesses and the city to make that happen. And I see this alley being also another unique creative opportunity to the degree that it can be. I mean, in the end, there's still going to be trucks and dumpsters back there, but I think there's a great opportunity to make it something more than just an alley. So I guess in summary, what I'm saying is specific to the site plan, I'm actually more encouraged than I was before. I think there's some additional improvements here, and I think it shows that, you know, there are some possibilities. I think I'm going to move the resolution here. I know we can continue to discuss it, but I figure Robert's rules, let's get it on the table. I'm going to read the resolution for clarity, and I'll start by making a motion to approve the site plan. Whereas the Royal Oak Planning Commission has reviewed a site plan, SP 17-09-23, to construct a 6-level, 86-foot mixed-use building with unspecified ground-level commercial uses and upper-level business, administrative, or professional offices, Royal Oak City Center, on the site of a municipal off-street parking lot located west of 211 South William Street, portion of parcel number 25-22-103-004, as submitted by Central Park Development Group, LLC. And whereas the Planning Commission has reviewed the planning subdivision memorandum dated August 24th, 2017 concerning the site plan, And whereas the Planning Commission has reviewed additional information submitted by the petitioner in correspondence dated August 15th, 2017. And whereas, at the request of the petitioner, the Planning Commission conducted a public hearing on the site plan at its meeting September 12th, 2017. And whereas the Planning Commission received further information about the site plan from the Planning Division staff, the petitioner, and the public during the public hearing on September 12th, 2017. And whereas the Planning Commission has recently approved 2 site plans for the office projects in the Central Business District.
For other office projects.
For other office projects in the Central Business District. And whereas the proposed site plan advances the goals and objectives for the city's downtown as set forth in the city's master plan as amended. Therefore, based on all the information presented to the Planning Commission by the Planning Division staff, the petitioner and the public, the Royal Oak Planning Commission hereby resolves as follows. Number 1, the petitioner's site plan meets the following specifications and standards as stated in 770-12B3 of the Royal Oak zoning ordinance, including A, the site plan conforms with all zoning ordinance regulations. B, all required information has been provided by the petitioner. C, the proposed use will not be injurious to the surrounding neighborhood and protects the general health, safety, and welfare and character of the city. D, there is a proper relationship between the major thoroughfares and proposed service drives, driveways, and parking areas. Proper access to all portions of the site on all sides of any structure have been provided. The building has been arranged to permit emergency vehicle access by some practical means to all sides. E, the location of buildings is such that adverse effect of such uses will be minimized for the occupants of that use and surrounding areas. F, natural resources will be preserved to maximum extent possible in the site design. G, landscaping, including grass, tree shrubs, and other vegetation are provided to maintain and improve the aesthetic quality of the site and area. And F, the proposed use complies with all city ordinances and any other applicable laws. 2, the orientation of the public's front facade and primary entrance, the height to width ratio for the east front and west front facades, and step backs for portions of the building above 40 feet in height are determined as necessary and advisable in accordance with 770-30B2, 770-30B4, 770-30F, and 770-42D, 2 of the Royal Oak zoning ordinance, and are hereby approved. The petitioner's site plan is approved subject to the remaining 6 contingencies stated in the Planning Division's memorandum dated August 24th, 2017 as follows. A, use of the building shall be limited to permitted uses in the Central Business District zone included under 770-42B of the zoning ordinance. Any special land uses included under 770-42C shall require approval of special land use permit and revised site plan approved by the Planning Commission. B, all paving, utilities, and work within the public rights-of-way shall be in accordance with the specifications and standards of the city engineer, including but not limited to the following. 1, relocation and/or replacement of existing water main within the public alley right-of-way as necessary. 2, relocation and/or replacement of existing sanitary sewer within the former William Street right-of-way as necessary. 3, approval of a stormwater management plan and a sanitary sewer study. 4, installation of streetscape elements within the 3rd Street right-of-way adjacent to the petitioner's property and impacted area. 5, all notations indicating work to be done by the city shall be removed. C, all exterior lighting fixtures shall comply with 770-96B of the zoning ordinance and other city codes and ordinances. D, all signage shall comply with the sign ordinance, Chapter 607, or receive the necessary variances from the Planning Commission. E, performance bonds shall be posted in the amounts to be determined by the building official. F, prior to the issuance of any building or right-of-way permits, 1, the site plan shall meet all other code and ordinance requirements as determined by the city building official and city engineer, including but not limited to the state building code and the city stormwater detention ordinance, Chapter 644. And 2, the city commission shall approve a land division creating a proposed parcel widening the public alley right-of-way by 10 feet along its east boundary and reconstituting the 2nd Street right-of-way, as well as any necessary license agreements for the use of the right-of-way by the petitioner.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mayor Fournier, seconded by Mr. Casada. Any discussion?
Just a couple housekeeping items.
Ms. Douglas.
In the first whereas, I think that should say has reviewed the planning division memorandum.
That's right.
And then under the therefore, you've got numeral 1 and then letters A through, the last one should be H, not F.
Right.
Mr. Godek.
As this motion was made to open discussion, I like what some of the comments from the fellow commissioners up here about the improvements as this plan has evolved to the alleyway, and it's widening and make it more of a pedestrian-friendly environment. And to that, I guess other than the widening of it in a bike rack, I'm not seeing much in terms of accomplishing making that a nice spot. One of the things I mentioned earlier was we're going to have a big hole in the ground here where we're redoing the sewer mains or the water line in that alley. It would be a great time to bury the electrical as well, so you don't have those electrical poles in that alleyway. Whether the city makes that effort or DTE or however that's paid for, this would be a great time to do that and help clean up that whole area. But I don't know if it's probably too late to make any amendments to the plan to try to further the comments made about further enclosing the dumpsters on both sides of the alley, whatever can be done to make that better.
Mr. Chase.
I just echo the sentiments of the board. I think it's a good plan. The first time it came in front. Just to Mr. Godek's point, the DTE makes the call. There's a lot of fiber optics and a lot of things underneath the city streets that they have to contend to. So putting things underground or overhead is up to the power companies, AT&T, and a bunch of other organizations. So it's not something that we can get into.
Mr. Casada.
I wanted to just, for the record, make sure that it's clear what we are reviewing today. We are reviewing the site plan. There was a lot of comments and concerns made, and I understand it's an issue, but we're not reviewing the development agreement. We're not reviewing the 5.5 million. We're not reviewing a number of things that were brought up. However, the standard for site plan review does include I'm looking at 77012, site plan review standards, and the Planning Commission shall determine a number of things. That's a command. We shall make these determinations, and there are a number listed, including that the proposed use will not be injurious to the surrounding neighborhood and protects the general health, safety, and welfare and the character of the city. D, there's a proper relationship between the major thoroughfares and proposed service drives, etc. E, locations of the buildings is such that the adverse effects and such uses will be minimized for occupants that use and the surrounding areas, not just the building. So these C, D, and E, for instance, do require us to review beyond the limits of the building. We are required to consider things that will be affected in the neighborhood and the downtown when this development, if the development goes in. That's a requirement. We've heard a lot of concerns, and I think a lot of those concerns are valid because they go into this site plan review rubric that we're required to review. I'm supporting the project, despite the fact I think some of those concerns are valid, because I was not convinced after hearing everything that I've heard, that there really was a serious danger that there would be any injury to the surrounding areas. I look at the development. I understand that parking is a necessity, but we also can consider that there's other parking decks that are going up right now. There's a huge parking deck going up across from the post office. We can consider what's happening and should consider what's happening or could happen with the farmer's market.
But what I heard and I saw, I don't think that the weight of those arguments about the danger to local businesses, traffic, parking, I don't see how this project is going to do anything but help rather than hurt. That's the way I see it. People may not agree with me, but I see this as to be a benefit to the surrounding neighborhoods, a benefit to the business, a benefit to the farmers market. And I did consider that. I'm coming down in favor of this project, and I think nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but we have people putting their money, betting on this. So that's a sign that somebody thinks it's going to work, and I think it's going to work, and I'm supporting the project.
Thank you, Mr. Casada. Mr. Closter.
I'm also going to be in support of the project. I hear the concerns of the community and agree that parking needs to be addressed. In the central downtown business district, having park once locations versus scattered surface parking is fairly typical. The pedestrian traffic in a dense urban area is typically much safer and much more enjoyable than traversing tremendous surface parking lots. So I think the city's goal of consolidating parking into single towers is a tremendous advantage to the city, its residents, and the people using the downtown. The incorporation of office work into the downtown area brings a tremendous daytime crowd, which most areas in southeast Michigan don't have the luxury of. It is a bolster to businesses, restaurants, etc. surrounding. So I think the general goal of the development really is in support of the surrounding facilities instead of being injurious to them. So I'm in support of the project, and I really think that it's going to be beneficial.
Thank you. I too will be supporting this. I supported it the first time around. I'm going to support it this time. I think it's an excellent project for this, the city and the location. Ms. Douglas brought up a really good point the last time, very simple point, that you have 700 people in this building that are going to be consumers, and they're going to patronize these establishments. Every building here in Royal Oak, every commercial building requires people. And this is 700 more people that are going to be in Royal Oak that are going to need to eat. And they're going to want to shop, and they're going to want to spend and buy. There's going to be people going out looking for food, and there's going to be potential for catering coming in. We'll make the assumption there'll be office space here, office buildings. And I'm in an office building, and we have lunch meetings, and we bring food in. So I'm been confused all along why the surrounding businesses are fighting this, are upset about this. I think it's going to be a real boon for this community. Yes, it's going to cause some disturbance during construction, like any construction project that we've all experienced even in our own homes, but it's going to be a temporary nuisance for long-term gain. So I too will be supporting this. If there are no other comments, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
One no, and so this is approved. Okay. Next, item 2 under new business is the public hearing for zoning ordinance text amendments for preservation and replacement of existing trees. There are two parts here, Article 2 and Part A, Article 2 definitions, and Part B, Article 6, landscaping and screening design standards. Mr. Twing.
Basically, you should be able to see and have seen these ordinance provisions at your July meeting. I think we walked through them briefly then. The Planning Commission did direct staff to set it for a public hearing. We did do that for this evening. What I would point out was we made one revision in the sense of consolidating definitions under the landscape provision, which would be in the definition section. And you'll see that highlighted on a couple of pages where under landscaping it defined berm, buffer, conflicting non-residential zone and things, rather than having the tree definitions or the definitions previously somewhere else. We've changed what you saw previously and added them under this one section. So that, with that, that's the only change from what you saw back in July. As I said, tonight's scheduled for the public hearing on this amendment. Unless there's questions, I'll stop and you can have the public hearing.
Any questions, Mr. Twing? Not seeing it, we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this zoning ordinance text amendments? Okay, not seeing, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commission. Is there a motion or further discussion or questions?
There is a suggested resolution, if you wanted to simply move that. And then this would go to the city commission. I think you got it.
I'm sorry, Mr. Casada.
Sorry, I did have a question for Mr. Twing. Are we empowered to change the language here and send it, or is this just an up or down?
Well, I guess it depends on the severity of the change. If it's just minor corrections or clarifications, I think you could do that. And then forward that as amended to the city commission. If you're adding major sections or delete, I mean, you could delete something, take something out, I would think, but to add something we haven't noticed, I would think we would stop and redo it. I don't know if that's clear.
Yeah, I think you answered my question.
Okay.
Is there a motion? Ms. Douglas?
Yes, I'll move the resolution.
Support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Chase. Any discussion? Yes, Ms. Douglas?
Yes, please. This actually comes out of the city commission. We had a lengthy discussion, or perhaps multiple discussions, about the fact that while we are a tree city, we are losing trees. One of the things that happened was in a burst, perhaps, I don't know, 40 years ago, the city planted a lot of silver maple trees because they grow fast. And unfortunately, they grow fast and then they become hollowed out and become a danger. And so we've lost a lot of them in a short period of time. And we recognize that if we don't do something about it, both A, to protect valuable trees on construction sites, B, to numerically replace them with more than we're losing, we'll continue to lose that valuable tree canopy that provides aesthetic benefits, air cleaning benefits, water retention benefits. So that's why the city commission asked the staff to develop this ordinance, and I'm delighted that we've got it in front of us.
Ms. Douglas, you're sounding like an environmentalist. Finally.
Busted.
Thank you. Mr. Casada?
I have some concerns about this. I also consider myself very pro-tree. I love the canopy. I got beautiful trees in my yard. I like to see the developers address these issues. My understanding, and I guess there's another question from Mr. Tim, Mr. Twink, sorry, is that this ordinance applies to projects that have to get site plan approval. And some of the site plan approvals will go to you administratively, but many will come to us, right?
Correct.
So what I also understand from the memo is that this problem was recognized and that steps have been taken and attention's been given to it, and we're already starting to turn the tide, yes? We now have plans in place that are going to increase the number of trees. I read the memo.
Yeah, I mean, there are requirements in the ordinance currently that require landscaping, basically, and then there are some suggested provisions, and then the discretion is to the planning commission for those items that come before you. When they're administrative approved, that discretion's really up to staff to say, are they in compliance or are they not?
And currently, replacement of all the trees is encouraged, yes?
Well, I wouldn't say replacement of trees is encouraged per se. It's where they're not proposing a building, parking, or complying with other provisions, those other areas need to have landscaping and shrubs or other materials. They also, in the right-of-way, are required under different ordinance to place some trees in the right-of-way depending on their length. So we are making them do that through site plan approval, but it's here now. What you're asking for is a summary of all those being taken away, and a requirement to put a number back, and/or potentially have to pay into a tree fund to be established by the commission.
Okay, I have two concerns with this, and I'd be happy to state them and let the other commissioners tell me why they shouldn't be my concern. I think, as a basic proposition, good design is extremely valuable and is really the basis of everything we're talking about. And if environmental concerns and stormwater management, tree canopies are important, and we state that as our intention, and we're reviewing the plans on that basis, what we need to encourage is good design. And that doesn't always mean every time you take a tree out, you put two back. It's hard to, in my view, to prescribe very specifically good design, because all trees are not created equal. They're not all equal, and maybe taking one away or taking two away and putting one back is better than taking one away and putting two back. It depends on what the design, the problems are and what the design solutions are. So I have an issue with that. I'm uncomfortable with that. The second thing I'm uncomfortable with is that if we pass this ordinance and we have the 2-to-1, we have one of these very high standard exceptions, is that you got to do it, if I read this correctly, unless there are unique, quote, unique, extraordinary, or exceptional conditions of the property that result in the peculiar or exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional undue hardship upon the owner. Now, to me, that's a pretty high standard. And really, we have other ordinances where if we really stuck to the exact verbiage of the standard, we would never grant anything. And I think in some way, that's what we've done here again. So I would either like to not have such a particular requirement for the trees, or soften the exception language so it would be more reasonable. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Casano. There is a motion on the floor. Is there any other discussion? Ms. Douglas?
So it was my reading of this that if your point is well taken, I mean, if there's no room for two trees there or it doesn't make sense, I think the plan is that they would pay to put a tree elsewhere in the city. Mr. Twing, am I?
Well, they would pay in potentially, and that's item 2 there, is rather than having that specific provision in the zoning ordinance, it's left up to the discretion of the commission to establish a payment in lieu. So if someone doesn't meet the standard, they would be required to pay into this tree fund to be used to plant trees somewhere else.
So I think that answers your question. Yes, no?
In part, but to get into that provision, you have to be extraordinary. You have to have an exceptional undue hardship to get to where you're talking about, to say, I don't want to put the trees. Okay, give us $300 to plant somewhere else. You can't get there unless you've met the standard.
So you feel the language of, unique, extraordinary, exceptional is too strong?
Yeah.
How would you, you're an attorney.
I would say it should meet the designs and the goals of either this particular section or the master plan or whatever we want to refer to. We have stated goals. The goal is to what? Preserve the canopy, maintain a large percentage of tree coverage, maintain beauty. To me, I would say those things and say, if you meet those standards, you can have an exception. If you're chasing our goals, well, you can be accepted.
Hang on.
Any other discussion?
How would that get amended? Just right now, or?
Well, if you got suggested wording on it, but I think what it says is, provided the planning commission determines there's a unique, so you, as part of your review, are the ones that are gonna determine whether there's a unique, exceptional, whatever the circumstance might be. Now, obviously, different makeups of the planning commission may have different opinion of what's exceptional, extraordinary, unique, but if you get a landscape plan in front of you and they can't meet the 1 per 2 or 2 per 1 taken away, you can make that determination and say that their plan's approved. It's still gonna be subject to paying into this fund for all those that are missing. So that determination of what's extraordinary and exceptional is yours.
I understand that. We have that, say, with the sign ordinance and other things. I raised this issue before, is
Right.
that the standard is too high, and we're sort of fooling ourselves to say that they meet the standard, because we say, what we're really saying is we look at something, we say, that's a good design. That works. And so we grant it. But it doesn't conform with the ordinance. I just want to do it again. I just don't want to create another one.
Well, then what you might wanna change is, provided the planning commission determines there are, and then strike whatever you think is, strike extraordinary, exceptional, and say unique conditions of the property.
Or even, I mean, I didn't wordsmith this, but beneficial, will benefit the city and advance its goals or whatever, we can work on it.
Mayor?
Would it be possible to add an "and" in there? So where we say, keep the exceptional, extraordinary, and/or, the project meets the goals
Sure.
that the city has
An
defined in
or
X, Y.
works, because once you put an or in there, then you could do one or the other.
We've got or.
No, we don't have anything that's not.
Well, it's still the "or" related to
have to add to it.
exceptions and exceptional conditions.
You'd have to say, or provides a benefit to the city in conformance with whatever, the master plan or the tree ordinance or whatever.
Yeah, I think our current wording says something as determined necessary and advisable by the planning commission. I think that's all it says, right? That's why you'll see it in the site plan write-ups, is if you're happy with the landscape plan that's presented, you're making a determination that that's fine. That's all it says now in the current wording, so I don't know if you want this to say that, similar wording in here, so it gives you broader discretion?
Well, now you're getting into another issue, because you have to have guidance. You can't have unfettered discretion, because that's not right either. So what you need is guidance. In other words, you're gonna tie it back to the master plan or the goals that are so stated. If we didn't state the goals, I thought that was interesting. We don't state the goals, we wanna preserve the tree canopy. We don't actually say that in there. You have to have some guidance, reference some guidance, and then give us the discretion to apply those, the facts and circumstance to the guidance that we're given. I don't think it's proper that we have unfettered discretion either.
There's still a motion, so we are in the discussion phase. Is there any other discussion on this motion? Mayor?
Mr. Casada brings up some really good points. Obviously we have to have some guidance, or it's not worth, having an ordinance or guidelines that we reflect on to make a decision. I think the intent of the commission, at least, direction given back to staff when we had the tree conversation was, make sure that, number one, we're aware that we're talking about trees, not as an afterthought, like, oh yeah, I didn't know there were 30 trees on that property and they were all removed, and, we had an opportunity through some sort of mechanism at planning to, have a better situation as it relates to the canopy. And I think, two, put some strict language in there to where, we talk about the unfettered discretion to say, oh, well, it's gonna bring some economic vibrancy to the city, so let's just let them cut down all the trees. We don't want that sort of thing to happen either. I think, I mean, I know we have a motion on the table. I mean, I can support it as it's written. I could also bring up this point to the city commission as well, regarding, you know, having not just the exceptions, but also if you have, on the other end, a project that meets all the goals of the city that we simply can't comprehend because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know the uniqueness of things. So I'm willing to support either way. If it passes the way it is right now, I'll carry the water to some extent. I don't know how Commissioner Douglas or Mayor Pro Tem Douglas feels about it, but you know, I'll bring that message back. And if it doesn't and we want to redo it and add it in there, I could support that as well.
So there was a motion by Ms. Douglas, support by Mr. Chase. You've heard the discussion. Is your motion in support still?
It stands as submitted.
Okay.
We vote, see what happens.
Okay. Mr. Casada?
I would just say, I would encourage that this is something we need to work on, I think, with this ordinance and others, and it seems to me it'd be worth a little verbiage to make it.
Like a second look at it.
A second look, I mean, it's only gonna be what, a month? That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, can we, let's say, table it for lack of better, and come back for rewording?
There's a motion to approve and a support.
Absolutely, but the
so
motion's to approve it.
We're
as
in the
submitted.
discussion phase, so.
Second.
I would remove my second, or support of my motion
You're
to
withdrawing your support?
table it. I think it could be rewritten. I agree with Mr. Casada.
So support's been withdrawn. So there's a motion to approve. Is there another support? So the motion to approve fails for lack of support.
I'd move to table the.
We can postpone it for a month and we'll
postpone
talk
it for a
about
month.
wording
Yes.
for that section. And we'll bring it back to you next month.
Do we need a formal postponing, or can we
Well,
just
I
postpone?
would make a motion to postpone to the October meeting
Okay, so
to
there's
work
been a-
on this exception wording.
There's been a motion by Mr. Casada to postpone. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Godek. All those in favor say aye.
Is there discussion?
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Douglas.
There's a condition that we have that we see in the sign ordinance that just popped into my head might be useful here. And that is that one of the conditions for a sign variance is that a sign could not be accommodated at that particular location. And I'm wondering if that might apply to trees as well. That is, if it, you know, if physically the site can't accommodate a tree, you know, that many trees, that might be one of the ways you measure it. I'm tossing that back to Mr. Twing for consideration.
Mr. Klooster.
I think one of the benefits of what we have here is we're now requiring a tree survey. So when plans come before the planning commission, the planning department will have had a chance to review what trees are there, as opposed to this is just the new plan. So revising the wording on the exemption to allow us some discretion, understanding that we now have knowledge of what was there previously and what is potentially being removed, allows adequate judgment, I think. So I'm in support of the motion to table this and re-examine the wording of the exemption.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion to postpone, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Postponed. Okay. E, other business. This is a sign variance. It's a request to reface existing monument sign for medical office, Neil King Physical Therapy at 26212 Woodward Avenue, with variance to waive 26.33 square feet from maximum permitted 42 square foot monument sign area. Mr. Twing.
The petitioner did apply for a sign permit. The building division did determine in their review that the petitioner's sign would increase the sign area of the existing monument sign to some 68 square feet roughly. Monument signs in this area are limited to a maximum of 42 square feet, and that's predicated the request for a variance of some 26.33 square feet on the maximum allowed monument sign. I don't have anything else.
Is that it? Okay, any questions from Mr. Twain? Not seeing any, is the petitioner here?
Good evening, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners. I'm Dennis Cowan, Cooney, and representing the owner, which is Commercial Joint Development, Inc. With me is Jim Johnson, who's the principal owner and partner, along with his other partner who's here, and also the new tenant, new business here to Royal Oak, which is Neil King Physical Therapy. Just briefly, I'm going to make a couple comments. I want to throw it over to Jim, who's been on Woodward for his family business for over 50 years, and specifically 33 years on Woodward, and then also for Neil, and then I have a few comments about how we got here. But I want you to know one thing. This sign is the same sign that's been there since the building's inception and construction. What happened is the ordinance changed over the years. And as you know, in newer buildings, there's smaller monument signs. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go through our brief presentation, because you've been here long enough tonight. So I wanted Jim to say a few words about the building and the sign. Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim Johnson, Jr. I was a longtime resident of Royal Oak for 30 years, and now we've had our business here for 55 years in Royal Oak, a different business. We have an accounting firm on Woodward Avenue. We have 4 buildings that we have Commercial Joint Development has developed, and all those 4 buildings were vacant and not being used. This one we have had for 22 years, and that sign went up, and our office was in that at the beginning, and then we moved 2 doors south of this, and we're still there. Again, we don't use the whole monument for our decals. As you can see in the picture, a lot of it's covered up by the flowers and things like that. Do you have any questions for me that you would like to ask?
Good evening. I'm Neil King from Neil King Physical Therapy. I would appreciate your consideration of the variance. I wanted to get into Royal Oak. My main office is in Rochester Hills. I wanted to get into Royal Oak because it's a dynamic growing community, and there's a lot of medical along Woodward Avenue and a lot of competition along Woodward Avenue, and it's difficult for especially first-time patients coming in to see the building sign that we have. And the sign that we have up there, that we want to put there would be a great boost to visibility for my patients. I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
As I mentioned, this isn't a new sign. What's different and why we're here is because one of the tenants changed. And so you'll see, I think we're living within the spirit of the ordinance, because we only use about 20 square feet of the actual monument sign with the 2 what I call inserts for the tenants. If you're familiar with that stretch of Woodward on the east side, it just so happens it's kind of turned out this way. The smaller buildings seem to have the smaller signs, and the larger buildings, which were a little bit older, have the larger signs. What's different about our sign is if you go to the 2 buildings to the north, which happen to be medical related, they use the entire face of their monument sign for the sign. We're, like I said, only using about 30%. So it's important, in talking to Neil, many of his patients, because they're either been injured or they're in therapy for recovery from surgery, are being brought by caregivers. they're being driven by caregivers. And it's important to have a monument sign that people can see, because the building's kind of recessed back, even though it has signs on the fascia of the building. So it's important for the caregivers who are trying to take care of the person they're bringing, plus find the building, many times for the first time or second time that they've been to the facility, to have a monument sign that they can clearly see and spot, especially if they're making the turnaround there or something of that nature, because we do have a two-face sign. So we would believe that we meet all the criteria. We would ask for your indulgence. I think the fact that we have a very responsible ownership team, people who have been here for a number of years, have played by all the rules. I think they are deserving of having that maintenance, that sign continued, and to allow the new insert for Neil King Physical Therapy to be placed on there. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner, Mr. Casada?
This is not a flashing electronic LED messaging sign, right?
Absolutely not. What you see is only what you're going to see. This is.
The sign's not lit at night either. They don't light a sign at night.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing any. Is there a motion? Ms. Douglas?
Yeah, I would move to grant the variance, and then I'll speak to my motion.
Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Casada. Ms. Douglas?
So I drove there today, and, you know, even turning right off Lincoln going north on Woodward, it was only luck, really, that I spotted the building number and pulled into their parking lot. I mean, driving up that stretch of Woodward, it's because nobody displays their building numbers properly, pet peeve, but there's that. But all the more reason to make it easier and safer for drivers to find this establishment. And I mean, I make this case all the time. The point of signage is wayfinding, and I think this is an aid to wayfinding.
Any other comments on the motion? Mayor?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Mayor Pro Tem Douglas said. I'll also say that, you know, for me, when I look at it, the change does not seem, you know, even evolutionary, let alone revolutionary. There's a tenant change. You know, the status quo remains. It's not aesthetically unpleasing, and I think it helps a business out in Royal Oak. I think what's being asked for is the minimal of what could be expected, you know, for a tenant change, and I'll be supporting the motion.
Mr. Klooster?
Yeah, just doing some quick calculations, looking at this decal size. I mean, I think if you look at the actual size of the signage, I think the intent of the ordinance is met, or the actual signage portion, not the gray steel monument. The actual signage portion, I think, falls within the requirements of the ordinance and really fits the spirit of the ordinance.
I agree. Thank you for investing in Royal Oak. I think it's a good idea to put a sign that people can actually see and find when they're on Woodward, traveling too fast. I'll be in support of this as well. Any other discussion? Not seeing all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next is another side variance, SV 17-09-07, request to install wall signs for fast food restaurant Burger King at 1711 North Main Street, while allowing non-conforming freestanding signs, menu boards, and traffic direction signs to remain with the following variances, of which Mr. Twing is going to talk about.
The petitioner did file for sign permits in the building department to install new wall signs at the restaurant's exterior facades. Building division did determine that those proposed signs were within the required standards for wall signs within sign area 2. However, they also determined there were several non-conforming signs on the site that did not comply with required standards in the sign section. Basically 2 freestanding signs, the drive-through menu board, and 2 traffic directional signs. The 1 freestanding sign is allowed in sign area 2. As I said, they have 2. The freestanding sign has a maximum height of 16 feet or 42 square feet. It's maximum sign area. The sign that is existing along Main, excuse me, is some 28 feet high and 108 square feet, so it does exceed the maximum allowable. The sign that is facing 12 Mile, the freestanding one, is within the height, but slightly over the square footage. The menu board, as listed, is got a maximum height of 6 feet and a maximum area of 20 square feet. The existing menu board is some 7.5 feet and has 45 square feet of sign area. And then the last non-conforming signs are the two traffic directional signs, and both have a height of 5.5 feet with the limit to a maximum of 3 feet in height. So those are the variances that are being requested from the petitioner in order to allow those to remain and then install the wall signs.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions? Ms. Douglas?
Yes, Mr. Twing, I drove through this site today, and there were other signs out back, like as you approach the menu board, pictures of food and stuff. Do those, although I'm looking at it on, Google Street View, and I don't see them here, is that perhaps something they just put in temporarily?
It could be. It could be they get some yard signs stuck in or something that's a temporary.
They were a little nicer than yards. They weren't like, lawn signs. Anyway.
But yes, it's possible.
And wrong.
Yes.
Is the petitioner here?
Yes. My name is Paul Lenowitz, Lenowicz. I'm a construction manager for Carroll's Corporation. We own and operate the Burger King. The question that Ms. Douglas just raised, we call that a pre-order menu board, which it's been there many years, I'll say, but it is going to be removed as part of, we are going to remodel the entire restaurant inside and out. That's why we requested to put the new signage on. So as part of the remodel, we will be removing that pre-order board.
Okay, are you, according to our instructions, you're asking to waive 25 square feet from the maximum permitted 20 square foot menu board. Are you still?
Yes.
What are you asking for?
Well, the existing menu board, again, that's been there. Carroll's Corporation purchased that restaurant from the former franchisee, about 1.5 to 2 years ago. And that board was existing then. It's a typical size for Burger Kings across the country. And it, I'd say, needs to be that size so that we can advertise all the different menu items that are available.
So you're asking, it's going to be removed, but you want to replace it with the exact same size?
That existing board, that one is going to remain. It's the pre-order board before you get up there. So if you're the, say, third car in line, you can view meals that are available to you before you get up to the ordering point. So that the pre-order board, that's the one that isn't shown on any of these slides. That's the one that's going to be removed. This one will
I see.
we're requesting that it remains the same size.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any questions for the petitioner? Okay, not seeing any.
I can add something else.
Oh,
On
sure.
on those, the what we call directional signs, the two that were oversized in height, those, I have no problem lowering them down to, is it a 3-foot maximum? That's a non-issue, I'll say. The only reason why they are that high is because sometimes snow gets piled up and, if it's only 3 feet high, it's not visible.
So you're asking to remove the 2.5-foot request?
I'll say yes, yes.
Okay.
I'll concede
That's one. Ms. Douglas?
Are you planning to, I mean, if we grant these variances, the 2 freestanding pole signs, are you planning to change the logos, the contents of those?
No, the only thing we'll do is paint them. We'll paint the sign poles and the can.
Yeah.
The poles that are blue will become black, and the silver can just gets painted a fresh coat of paint around it. But it'll remain just like that.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Godek?
I guess I'll make my comment while you're standing there so you can respond to it. It goes along the same lines of what Commissioner Douglas just referred to. And we just held another restaurant on Woodward to the same criteria of the freestanding signs. When they were updating their signs, the one that causes me problems is the 28-foot freestanding sign. It's nearly double what's allowed. The one that you have on 12 Mile is fine. It's within a half foot of maximum permitted height and square footage. It's really close. But this section of Main Street in particular has no site restrictions north or south of this. There's nothing to see on the other side of the street but a cemetery. This is an opportunity to bring that sign back into scale with other freestanding signs before and after that as people approach our downtown. So I always look at this as an opportunity. If you want to update your signs, bring the one that's the worst into conformance, and that's the 28-footer. And that's, you know, if B and C weren't in there, I'd say yes, do whatever you want within, you know, the menu signs are fine. You got to do that so I can order the right product, but I'll have no problem finding this establishment with a compliant freestanding sign on Main Street.
If we have to lower to be in compliance, that'll bring the reader board down to somewhere around eye level, which possibly will block visibility, and also it leaves it open for vandals or somebody to mess with our letters, our signage.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Not seeing, is there a motion?
Just get public comment on it.
No public comment.
I'd move the sign variance with everything except B and C.
I'm sorry, Mr. Go, did you say letter D?
B and C get stricken.
B and C, okay. So,
He's removed G.
yeah, that's right. G is removed. So the motion is to allow A, D, E, and F?
That's correct.
Is there support?
I want to, so allow A, about C?
No, not C.
Which one?
C is
A,
the
D, E, and F.
C is the size of the freestanding, and B is the height.
Just discussion on C. Is that total 66 square feet include both freestanding signs?
Yes. It's 108 according to the building department.
So if we strike C, both signs have to fall within the 42 square foot
Yes.
requirement.
Does that mean that each sign is only allowed to be 21 square feet?
That would mean your total freestanding sign area is 42 square feet.
So I'm sorry, I'm still not clear. What stays in and what goes out?
My understanding is you're approved, Mr. Godak is granting A, D, E, and F.
That's correct. My understanding was C is the size of the freestanding sign,
That's correct.
which is 66 square feet greater than the allowed 42. Their sign on 12 Mile is within a half square foot of the size requirement.
That's total sign area. That's
Right.
not each individual sign.
That's-
So if you strike C, he either has to have a sign on 12 Mile as it stands, or one new sign on.
I'm saying leave the one on 12 Mile existing. I'm okay with that, which is what I understand is E and F. I'm not asking him to
No,
do anything with,
item C
not
only
E.
relates to the sign on Main Street.
That's my understanding.
Item C is the size of both of those put together, and the total of it is 108 square feet. It's exceeding the 42 by 66.
Okay, so that's just on Main Street.
That's just
that
Main
sign.
Street.
Okay.
The one on 12 Mile is a half square foot too big. Its height is okay.
Okay.
So there's a motion by Mr. Godek. Is there any support, or do we need another minute or two to digest this?
No, I'll support it.
Support by Ms. Douglas. Discussion. Mr. Casada.
Now, I'm a little unclear. What I just heard Mr. Godek say, something that I think I can support, is that the 12-mile sign is not the object of your motion. You want the Main Street sign to come into conformance. You want that sign to come into conformance, which would be 42 square feet.
And shorter.
And 16
And
foot,
shorter. But what I'm also think I'm hearing from Mr. Twing and Mr. Klooster is that if we vote in favor of your motion, the 12-mile sign has to be calculated along with the Main Street sign. No?
No.
No, they're separate.
Okay. So,
The wording on this is a little unclear because allowed is one freestanding sign with a total maximum sign area of 42 square feet. So if we allow two signs, we also have to increase the maximum allowable sign area, because it's not based on individual signs. The language is allowable freestanding sign area.
and I think that's what I understand, is that so instead of having the sign on Main Street meet the height requirement and the size requirement, the two combined would have to, which would do what?
That's my concern on the language is with the motion. I just want to clarify that he's not
Yeah.
limited to a total square footage of 42 square feet for
For
all
each
freestanding.
sign.
For each sign.
For each sign, okay, that just needs to be added into the language to clarify, I think.
The item A is allowing two freestanding signs, so that's one nonconformance that we're okay with. So the fact that you've gone forward and allowed two freestanding signs, then you have 42 on each one. So they're not tied together if you kind of considered after A.
Yeah.
Again, for clarification, is that 42 on each side or of, so I can have 21 square feet on each side of this?
So each sign face can be 42. So the southbound side can be 42 and the northbound side can be 42.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
you have a total of
6 by 7 feet.
Any other discussion?
I only want to say that I want to pick up on what Mr. Godek said. I think you're talking about the Arby's on Woodward, and we enforced the size and height ordinance, and that sign looks better, and it looks better with the Arby's that's there. And you are improving the look, you're sort of rebranding this property. It looks like it's going to look great, and so I'm going to anticipate that our decision here today is going to assist in making the entire property look even better, like what happened at the Arby's. So that's what I think.
Any other discussion? There's been a motion by Mr. Godek and support by Ms. Douglas to allow for items A, D, E, and F with G being waived. All those in favor say aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you. Again, for clarification, so I can be 16 feet overall height on that side.
Thank you. E3, Next item, sign variance 17-09-08. It's a request to reface existing freestanding sign for a law office. Law offices of Michael Steinberg at 300 East 4th Street, with variance to allow continued use of non-conforming and prohibited sign. Mr. Twing.
Again, the petitioner did apply to the building department to reface the existing freestanding sign. Freestanding signs are not allowed in sign area 3. So you would, first part would be to allow the sign itself as a freestanding sign. What's being proposed is, as I said, refacing it. It's got a height of approximately 19 feet to 2 inches. The sign face itself is made up of 3 separate sections. The total of those all come to a total of about 26, a little over 26 square feet in sign area between the 3 areas that are being proposed. Guess that's the request.
Thank you, Mr. Twing. Any questions for Mr. Twing? Not seeing any, would the petitioner like to?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I'm here tonight on behalf of Michael Steinberg. What he has is a non-conforming sign in the Sign 3 district, like mentioned. What he's wanting to do is update the sign, new face, update the interior guts of it, put LEDs in it, paint the outside, paint the box to bring it up to basically standards in the area. There's a little history on the background of this sign, which I'm going to let Mr. Steinberg explain to you. The sign right now is on an angle. At one time, it was going directly parallel with the building, and has been turned now at the request of Royal Oak. So I'm going to let him explain that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. My name is Michael L. Steinberg. I've been a proud, I've had a law office in the city of Royal Oak since 1991, the present location since 1995. I am a tenant of the VFW, who is literally across Troy Street from me. That sign goes back to the 50s. At one time, you may remember, there was a telephone answering company that had it. I've had rights to the sign since 1995. When I say rights, I have been paying a lease. I lease it for $100 a month. It became, I reserved my rights to it until I guess the phone company had fully had extinguished theirs. I had an option contract on it, and the sign got moved. I see Mr. List is in the room tonight as an agreement with he and I dealing. That's how I got to meet Mr. List, and we've had a long working relationship in this town. We moved the sign for what we then thought was current law under Michigan at that time, and the sign was refaced. The sign has been weathered and dilapidated. I was lucky. I've spent almost 2 years trying to find someone that actually could do the sign because of its age and the mechanics of it. I've contracted with Tim here he's literally gonna gut it out, put in nice new natural lights in it that would be on a timer, that time with the sun. And I've had a light on there, and like I said, we really do want to get the sign up. I've had it up there for years, and I'm just hoping that, this is the design. We understand that there's hanging signs are not permitted, although I think some of you have driven around the area and you'll see that there are signs that hang over. I'm not looking to turn mine as I get Troy, the 4th Street Auto turned theirs also. Both of us, I think, did that within compliance with the law as it was at that time.
And to add to that, on the front side of the building, there's only 4 feet of space between the building and the sidewalk. So doing any type of ground sign in that area is going to be it's not actually going to be able to be done with only a 4-foot space in that area.
I open myself up or Tim up to questions if there's.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner?
You can see it's pretty weathered. It's been hard to find someone to actually would work on it.
Mr. Casada?
I guess I just asked the petitioner, and I hope you appreciate, I realize you didn't put the sign there. This is truly a hideous sign.
It is a hideous sign.
And if there was, have you looked at, with your landlord, maybe jointly or something, doing something else with this sign? I mean, it's really, you can't, by refacing it, it's not gonna help. I mean, it's gonna look
I
terrible.
tend to disagree with you, Mr. Quatsada.
Yes.
Quatsada. When it was up and running, it was a really nice sign. It was beautiful, actually. It's weathered. I think that, I mean, one of the things that we left out, I mean, the sign's gonna get fully repainted. Mr. Mullins is gonna, we're actually even before we put the face in, we're gonna paint everything, bring it up, put a real fresh coat on it, and make it look nice. I mean, my business, I'm embarrassed about this sign. I've been wanting to get somebody to do something with it for a couple of years. It's like I said, it's been trying to find, because of it being 1950s technology, nobody wanted to touch it. So he's gonna literally, I mean, I'm looking at spending thousands of dollars to bring it up to speed. And with the LED, when it was lit up, particularly the dome one on the top, it was nice, and I'd like to restore it to even nicer.
All right, but the answer is, I mean, does the landlord allow you to put a sign on the side of the building or anything like that?
Well, I don't, I mean, the landlord was here. Jack, the president of the VFW, was here. I've got the support of them. As far as putting on the side, I mean, I heard one of the council people say, you know, it's to wave them in essence. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I practiced regularly in the 44th District Court. With my sign facing in that direction, I at least have an opportunity to let people know that I'm there. It also faces towards the police station, which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, I've been in business for a long time, only doing criminal defense work, so I would like to draw business. I've spent a lot of money trying to brand myself, and this is the last piece. As far as putting it against the wall, the problem is the VFW's building is so tall that it would really almost block anybody being able to see it unless you're right on top of it.
If I can just follow up, I mean, to me, it's not, I didn't mean to disperse talk about the facade that you're gonna replace, which I'm sure that will be better, but the entire structure looks like a battleship. I don't think you can paint that any color and make it look attractive. So my question really goes to, have you looked at alternatives other than keeping this structure there?
I'd like Tim to answer that.
One of the things you had mentioned about doing a possible wall sign, if you look at the picture there, the problem with the building is there's gutters going down the face. So we'd have to take off a gutter, put a sign on, and put a gutter back in front of a sign, which wouldn't make very much sense in terms of blocking a new sign that we were to put in. There's nowhere on that whole building where a sign would actually be beneficial as a wall sign. And like,
I think the question, though, is can you take the sign and mount it on top of the pole without all of the extra guide wires and support elements? Can you just take the sign box, cut the pole off, and set it on top of the pole?
that is a feasible option.
I think that's what you're
That,
getting
that
to.
was my next question, yes, thank you, Tim. Yeah, I mean.
Can I have 1 second?
Sure.
Can you do that?
Mr. Godek?
We could, I'm saying, I'm sorry, I cut somebody off.
No, I'd like to hear what you just said, we're gonna say.
He can do it. That's been a interesting question too. You know, I'm an attorney, I don't know much about science, but, you know, I look at Equinars, which is, if I'm pronouncing it right, the business that's due east of me, and it looks, and I also talked to my insurance agent, which is the Atlas Insurance. Those guys are my insurance agent, and theirs hang over, but they were able to, I think when they both put, I know that my insurance agent was able to alter his box, the Atlas Insurance, which is down 4th Street a little bit more. So I think it could be nice. I'm sorry, somebody did have a question.
Mr. Golder?
I withdraw my question based on the petitioner wanting to do something that looks better. So I'm good.
I have a question for Mr. Twing when he gets done.
I have a question.
Mr. Chase?
Do we need the jail bars and the guy up on the top there? I know that's your business, but I'm having a hard time with that aspect.
Can I answer that, Mr. Chase?
Sure, please.
Literally, in branding myself, I've been using, I mean, it's on my business card. I've been, you know, I do it, I have it on a couple of my web pages. I mean, I had to come up with something creative. I'll tell you the original, that was a Microsoft image from 20 years ago. I mean, it's funny because the graphics design guy in my office still has the original design of that. In fact, we showed it to Mr. Mullen so that he could try to modernize it. I mean, to me, I know it might seem a little, I mean, based on the size of that sign now, if it's taken, if I have to, I don't know whether we can even get rid of that circle up there.
Even just like maybe your face or something, 2 thumbs up or, you know, like everybody else does or something.
Do what?
Your face, I was
want my
being
face up.
facetious.
My wife doesn't like my face anymore, but.
And I'd suggest we just stay away from content.
Yeah.
Content is not something we want to get into
Right.
discussion on.
Mr. Twing, if, you know, I don't think it's the goal of this body to redesign this person's sign or to come up with designs for this person's sign. I mean, we're making some helpful suggestions, but I'm looking at a proposal of a sign. I'm not looking at a proposal of a what-if sign. So is it possible that we could give him some direction and he could come back at the next meeting with some of the helpful suggestions that have been made here?
You can table it to have him modify it. You can also make a motion to approve a sign within the sign variance and be specific about what you want to see. I mean, if you want to get a design that gets rid of the guide wires and the support braces that go across, then, I mean, you can do that too. But to answer your question, yeah, you can postpone it and direct them to come back with a different sign.
Okay, just a question.
Or you can just simply deny it if you don't like the proposal in front of you and be done with it. I mean, those are all options.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Oh, go ahead.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I have a question.
sure.
Obviously, the sign is above what is allowed in the current zoning district.
Right.
If we were to come back with a new box, because realistically, I'm gutting the whole inside. There's neon in there, there's old neon wires. It's really a fire hazard up there.
Okay.
And we're gonna be gutting the whole inside anyways. So to go to the gentleman's point down here, if I was to cut all that guide wires, all that stuff off and put a new box on the top and keep the same height, would that please the planning commission?
Again, looking for guidance, I think is what we're
Sure.
looking
No, we
to do
understand.
there. And I'm hoping you will table at this point to let us get the guidance, the necessary guidance. We're committed to being good.
Would
I've
you
had
like
my
this to be tabled? Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking you.
My biggest concern is, are we gonna be allowed to keep the height? Because lowering the sign down to the required 16 feet, it's gonna bury the sign inside the building.
We only have not even 3 feet of clearance over that right now.
Mr. Godin?
When Mr. Twain was describing what could work here, I didn't have a problem with the height, but you're still going to have to cut the pole to maintain the existing height. You can't just take the sign off and stick it on the top of the pole. You got to shorten the pole so you maintain the existing height.
Actually, the pole will remain the same height, and we'll put the sign over the top of the pole.
Yeah.
The top of the pole won't stick out the top of the sign,
No, it
will
will
it?
not. It'll all be self-contained.
So if the sign stayed the same height and the pole skewered the sign, and everything else stayed the same, if we were able to describe that tonight, I'd be willing to support it.
Are you making a motion, Mr. Godin?
Is that something you want to get going tonight?
Well, I'd suggest that you can postpone it. I mean, and then you can see what what you're getting, if that's your concern.
If the petitioner can take our direction in a motion tonight, I have no problem making a motion. It's,
We're asking you to postpone at this point.
okay?
I'm moving to postpone.
Nice try.
Well, if you were sitting on that side, you could do that, but you're not.
No, I'm sorry. You know
It's,
what, if I could just give you a little bit of history, this used to be Judge Daniel Sawicki's courtroom, so it's a little weird not to be moving for something new.
Okay, there's been a motion by Mr. Godek to postpone,
Second.
second by Mr. Casada. Any discussion on that? Ms. Douglas?
Yes, I'll vote against this motion, and I was prepared to enter a motion to deny the variance. Our sign standards have changed since 1950. We now do not allow freestanding signs in this sign district. And I'm going to invoke the granddaughter clause. We talk about grandfathering a sign in, but I want to talk about our granddaughters and the city that they will inherit from us and how it will look. We're trying to control the looks of our downtown and the areas around our downtown, and we don't allow freestanding signs in this district. And we only get one bite at this apple in order to get rid of something like this, and it's happening today. And I'm all due respect, but I want to see this sign gone. So that's my opinion.
Ms. Douglas? Any other discussion or comments on the motion? Okay, so all those in favor of postponing, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
No.
Mr. Klusner, Ms. Douglas opposed. Motion passes to postpone.
Thank you very much for your time.
Madam Chair and the rest of the council and Mayor.
Thank you. Okay. Item 4 under other business. This is a
It's
5-year
basically
review
a
of the master
reminder on the master plan, the 5-year review. The last time we amended it was 2012, the most recent amendment. We've had some prior discussion with the planning commission about looking for direction. What staff's giving you here is basically 3 resolutions for you to consider. Not that you have to adopt any one of them tonight, just more of a reminder that we do need to do something with this during 2017, as that's the 5-year anniversary of it. Your options are, to adopt an entirely new master plan and adopt a resolution that indicates that's the direction you want to go. A resolution that you think certain sections need to be amended, and then identify those. And then lastly, simply say that the current master plan that's in place has been reviewed and is adequate. So again, I just want to keep this in front of the planning commission until you're ready to give staff direction on where we're going with this. And again, depending on what action you take, it may facilitate a request to the city commission to provide funding for, depending on what the amendment is.
Ms. Douglas?
So I'm going to make a case for a new master plan. The draft language that we've had here says changes, City of Royal Oak has changed within the last 5 years to warrant an entirely new master plan, including but not limited to the following, and then it says, list conditions that have changed that warrant adoption of a new master plan. Take one down and pass it around.
So you're looking at number 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Things that have changed since 1999. The infill housing boom in Royal Oak, autonomous vehicles, Airbnb, ride sharing, declining driving by young people, climate change, pickleball, aging baby boomers, the city's evolution into an entertainment district, growing demand for small homes and walkable urban places by seniors and millennials, and our infrastructure's continued deterioration. The goals and objectives, the goals of a master plan are driven by people through an active public engagement process. And who can say that the goals that our community dictated 20 years ago are the same as they are today? And I would imagine that they can't be. I mean, 20 years is a generation. And if we don't come back to the people and ask them about what goals, what big things they want for our city, fine-tuning the existing master plan isn't going to help us. I mean, one example, in the current plan that we've been revisiting for the past 20 years, historic preservation is a high priority. Is that true today? I mean, it's not, it doesn't come up in conversation, it's nowhere on the radar. I think that our current land use allocations don't address the findings of the target market analysis that we did this past year. I think zoning classifications that specify occupancy, like single family, limit our ability to accommodate diverse housing needs. We're seeing ground floor office uses on Washington Avenue, although on page 18, the master plan says discourage ground floor office uses on Main and Washington. In multiple places, the current plan calls for transit-oriented development. Have we addressed this objective sufficiently or at all? If not, should we continue to pursue it? Housing demand is overtaking industrial demand in the south end. This has come up several times with the multifamily developments that we've approved down there. The end of the personal property tax means that industrial development is no more desirable than any other land use. The current master plan zoning defines research and design as industrial uses, but in this information age, these may need further detail since they may instead be similar to office or medical uses. The plan contains a section on form-based codes with no objective to use it. I think we need to ask what parking demand will be like 20 years from now. We're building parking decks. Are we going to need those parking decks 20 years from now? The goal of 180,000 square feet of downtown office space isn't in the plan, yet here we are with it. I think that's a good thing, but still, it's not there. But what else do we envision for our downtown? And then just a random thought, page 62 calls for a senior master plan committee. And I particularly am concerned with the needs of seniors in Royal Oak. They want to age in place. And that may be in their own home or at least in our city, and I don't feel that we have the housing or services to accommodate them. And I mean, if we go forward with a new master plan, I think that has to be an important central element of it, since I've said this over and over again. By the year 2030, 25% of our residents are going to be 65 or older, and we need to keep that in mind. So for all of those reasons, I advocate for a complete new master plan.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. This is very thoughtful. Appreciate your efforts. Any of this, Mr. Godek?
I agree with a lot of the thought processes that came out with what Commissioner Douglas put forward here. I guess in terms of looking at a master plan, one of the things that I try to focus on is like what we shouldn't be doing, like the big mistakes that shouldn't happen in our community. And much of this memo is very forward-thinking, very positive. I guess my caution is some of the comments that former Chair Mr. Halleck made about the prior plan having very good benefit. It's served the city very well. It's served the test of time. I don't say we should, not look from a ground-up approach, but there are what I consider the most important base of our city is the family neighborhoods. We can argue what's going on with the downtown and this development that everybody's having a heartburn over, but preserving neighborhoods to me is paramount to a master plan, and that really needs be where we still look at the old plan. The zoning overlay districts, the restriction on Bigfoot houses. I think it's great that we get this infill of new single-family residents, but I like the term single-family residence for our neighborhoods. I really don't want to see, heavy density multifamilies taking over single-family homes where it might become profitable for a developer to come into a neighborhood and, buy 10 houses in a row and put up a high-density, real small square footage kind of thing. So that's my concern with this master plan as we move it forward. The exception to what I just said, though, is like on the south end where, there's industrial and multifamily seems to make sense as we approve those areas. But, our existing neighborhoods, I think, are a great strength to this community and why I want to live here and continue to live here.
Mr. Casada?
Just a quick comment. Commissioner Douglas's statements here are yes, that's a pretty good case right there. I know we've amended the master plan recently. I guess, was anybody involved in that? I mean, in 2012? Because to me, I wouldn't be able to feel I could make any informed decision without reviewing the whole master plan anyways. So I'm curious about the amendment process. Was that initiated by somebody or some group who said, hey, we got to change this, or was that the result of a review? Does anybody know?
2012, the amendment started with several things that occurred prior to it. There were discussions about a non-motorized plan. A non-motorized plan for the entire city was contracted through using energy efficiency money from the federal government, and we had a consultant out of Chicago write an entire just non-motorized plan. Segments of that were presented to the Planning Commission for inclusion into an amendment to the master plan. But as part of their writing the non-motorized section, they did several community meetings and got input from a variety of groups. I don't remember how many meetings they had, but they had one or two at the farmers market and I think at the north end. In addition to that, transit-oriented development section came out of some work that was being done by the WA3 along Woodward, and they had a lot of input from stakeholders along Woodwards for the whole segment, including Royal Oak. And so segments of that study were again taken and incorporated into the City of Royal Oak's master plan. And then I believe the last big one, and again, they paid for it, we didn't. We just had staff incorporate it through the normal public hearing processes. And then the last part was really related to access management, and again, relying on a study that SEMCOG did and funded that looked at Rochester Road from Main Street all the way up to Oakland Township along Rochester, the entire length, and they looked at every segment, made a recommendation along every segment, and we took and incorporated the Royal Oak portion through the approval amendment process. So there were significant studies and costs. None of those dollars are paid by Royal Oak in this directly. And so we were able to take parts of that and bring it in and add to the master plan.
Okay, that's the background that I was looking for. Those were
And that's
ads.
that's what occurred in 2012.
Those were ads.
The big items.
That wasn't the result of a comprehensive review that somebody
wasn't a
only
rewrite
wanted
of
to
the whole
amend.
It really did not look at the land use map. It didn't really look at the goals and objectives sections, but it added things that were being talked about.
Okay, thanks.
Prior to that, the Planning Commission, I think, has simply said on 2 occasions the 1990 master plan was fine, 1999.
Okay, thanks.
So if you want to move forward with this, so you got a resolution there with these items, I would do that and we'll formally move forward.
Do we need a motion?
Yeah, I would, one of the resolutions,
Okay.
you got to put on the record what you want to do with it. You can do it tonight next, like I said, I just need it done probably during 2017.
I will so move.
Okay, got a motion by Ms. Douglas. Support by, was it Mr. Coaster? Okay. To pick item number 1, a resolution to adopt a new master plan
Right, with this list of.
with the addendum prepared by Ms. Douglas.
I'll send you the document.
Okay, is there continued support on that? Mr. Klooster, is that who? Okay. Any discussion on that motion? Not seeing it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay. Any other business? I have one item. I don't know if this is for Mr. Twing or our attorney, but we seem to have an issue with our public hearing and the time of the public hearing, which is 3 minutes. And so at the end of 3 minutes, I'm going to ask them or let the petitioner or the public know that their time is up. Sometimes we allow for more time, sometimes we don't. Is there a legal 3-minute?
No, the courts have ruled what's reasonable.
Okay.
3 minutes has been adopted by a lot of municipalities, a lot of governmental agencies. Anything less than that, I don't think has been tested.
Okay. So
Anything more than that, I don't see a problem with other than the length of the meeting.
right. Well, I guess my trepidation is that, and it's the pleasure of the commission, but Mr. Godek allowed for additional time, which is fine. If every other person wanted 6 minutes, then we're up to a 6-minute public comment for each individual. And if that's the direction we want to go in, then we need to change it as a commission, because I need some direction.
They just shush you anyway and keep talking.
Well, and I'm not fond of that,
I wouldn't be
I'm a
either.
stickler for rules myself.
Well, we set our rules of operation every year, right? I mean, the time to do that is when we're setting our annual tools, Mr. Twing?
Well, I was just looking, I think there might be something in your bylaws about length of public comment but yeah, it's really your call as the body as to how long you're going to allow somebody to speak.
So I'm one person. If it's my call, it's 3 minutes.
I say you stick with the 3, and if it's, I mean, I don't know if you can pick or choose or what he just said, but you could, if it's a full crowd, it's 3 minutes and 3 minutes only, and then.
The one exception that I have not minded in the past is if someone's representing an entire group of neighbors, which I think is really great, because they're prepared, they're concise, and they've got their comments down, and I would have no problem allowing them 5 minutes or 6 minutes. But in this case tonight, and I thank you for allowing Mr. Gorsica more time, but each person could have asked for that. So what's the pleasure of the commission?
My opinion is I think you run an excellent meeting, and I don't see any reason for change.
Okay.
You do kind of keep people on topic and to their time limit. And if someone's presenting points that anybody in this body seems to think will help us understand the problem, then it's upon us to make a motion to extend time. But I think it's working the way you do it.
Okay.
And I would add too, I mean, I think the one disadvantage we have here, and maybe we can check into it, is that the timer,
It's not shown.
It doesn't show, and I
I
think
don't
most
have
people
any
are taken
control
off
over
guard.
that.
I know.
I just have this, and I hate to,
Well, if I could say just one thing, that when I appeared for the zoning board of appeals meetings, they would typically sit where the city clerk, Melanie, sits, and I would operate the timer.
okay.
Although I've forgotten how to use it, I'm sure I'll remember.
3 hours.
It's kind of a complicated machine, because the city commission is 5, and I don't want to go on with it, but when I change it to 3, I have to make sure Melanie has it back.
It's just set over there on that thing and it shows up over
Are
here.
you going to be coming to our meetings?
Okay.
Oh,
All
like
right.
forever?
Well, I just wanted to have this discussion to make sure the commission was feeling comfortable with the way that we're running meeting.
Just quickly, I'm feeling comfortable. I think it should be 3 minutes. If you give them 4 minutes, then they're gonna take 5. If you give them 5 minutes, they're gonna take 6. And I think you politely tell them that they have to wrap up, and some people are polite and some people aren't. But I think you do a good job, and I think we should stick with the 3 minutes. I also supported Mr. Godek's motion because I thought the lawyer was gonna make a legal point on behalf of a bunch of people, so I was waiting for that, so that's why I supported it.
No, I'm fine with that. I just want to try to have some consistency here and make sure that I'm adhering to the comfort zone of this commission. I'm sensitive to that, so.
Yeah,
I think you're fine.
3 minutes is sufficient for a concise, thoughtful statement.
Okay, thank you. So next item is adjournment of this meeting.
Motion to adjourn?
Support.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.